What if the world around us is filled with secrets so strange, so unsettling, that even the bravest minds hesitate to uncover them? For centuries, unexplained phenomena have haunted the edges of reality, challenging everything we think we know. From bizarre disappearances to chilling encounters with the unknown, these mysteries leave us questioning what is truly possible and what lies just beyond our reach. Tonight, we'll explore 3 hours of the most eerie, perplexing enigmas ever recorded, each one more confounding than the last. So sit back, relax, and prepare to journey into the heart of the unsolved. In the windswept hills of northern Britain, where the mist rolls in off the sea and the earth feels untouched by time, there lies a mystery that has captivated historians and explorers for centuries. The fate of the Roman Ninth Legion, once a mighty force of thousands, has puzzled scholars ever since it vanished from the historical record around the year 117 BC. The traces of their existence are all but gone, leaving behind only fragments of stories and theories, each more speculative than the last. The Ninth Legion, known by its full title Legio IX Hispana, was one of the elite units of the Roman Empire, distinguished by its service in the campaigns of Emperor Augustus. It was stationed in Britain, tasked with maintaining Roman control over the northern territories, lands that were rugged and untamed on the fringes of the empire. For nearly a century, the Ninth Legion performed its duties with precision, guarding Roman forts and outposts from rebellious tribes, securing the borders of the empire with both discipline and brutality. But in the year 117 BC, the legion simply disappeared. The official records tell us that they marched north, into the vast wilderness beyond Hadrian's Wall, but after that, they vanish entirely from the pages of history. No word of their fate, no battle, no retreat, no trace of their demise has ever been found. What happened to the Ninth Legion remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the ancient world. Some theories suggest that the legion was destroyed in battle. The British tribes, particularly the Pictish and Celtic peoples, were known for their fierce resistance against the Roman invaders. Perhaps, some speculate, the Ninth Legion was overwhelmed in a skirmish with these tribes, its soldiers slain to the last man. The idea of a catastrophic defeat is not far-fetched. It is known that the Romans did not always have the upper hand in their military campaigns, particularly in the harsh terrain of northern Britain. Yet, there are no Roman records that mention such a defeat. In fact, the disappearance of the Ninth Legion is so thorough that it defies explanation. No inscriptions, no battle accounts, no survivors, nothing. The silence in the historical record is eerie. In the years following their disappearance, the Roman Empire continued its occupation of Britain, but the Ninth Legion was never replaced, and the emperor's chroniclers made no attempt to explain its loss. The fact that the Romans did not even make an official record of such a significant event only deepens the mystery. As the years passed, other, more speculative theories began to emerge. Some suggest that the Ninth Legion did not perish in battle at all, but instead was quietly withdrawn from Britain to serve in another region of the empire, perhaps even stationed in the distant provinces of the east. This theory is based on the absence of any record of their destruction. It is possible, some say, that the legion was reassigned, with its soldiers simply fading into the wider machinery of the empire, their departure unnoticed by history. Then there are those who believe the disappearance of the Ninth Legion is connected to something far more enigmatic. Could it be that the legion met a fate beyond the grasp of conventional military explanation? Some researchers point to the possibility of a catastrophic event, an ambush so devastating that it left no survivors, or a dark, unrecorded conspiracy within the Roman ranks. Others go even further, suggesting that the Ninth Legion was not defeated by any human enemy at all, but rather lost to something otherworldly. What if the Ninth Legion was lost in a strange, uncharted place, beyond the known world of the Roman Empire? Could they have stumbled upon something hidden in the misty wilderness of northern Britain, something that was never meant to be found? This, of course, remains pure speculation, but the absence of clear answers, combined with the mysterious nature of their disappearance, keeps this theory alive in the imaginations of some. Was the Legion destroyed in battle? Was it simply reassigned and erased from history? Or was there something more, something hidden in the mist of time that we will never fully understand? As we stand on the edges of this mystery, we are left with a single haunting question. Is it possible that the true fate of the Ninth Legion is still out there, waiting to be discovered? Or has it been lost to time forever? The answer remains elusive, as the shadows of the past continue to shift and change. As we continue our journey through the most perplexing mysteries of history, we now turn our attention to an object that has captivated both scholars and adventurers for over a century, an ancient artifact whose design and purpose seem far ahead of its time. In 1901, off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, a team of divers stumbled upon a shipwreck buried under centuries of sand and seaweed. Among the wreckage, they discovered something truly extraordinary: a series of corroded bronze gears, fragments of intricate mechanisms that, to the untrained eye, seemed utterly out of place. This was the birth of the mystery of the Antikythera mechanism. The device, now housed in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, is often described as the world's first analog computer. It's a marvel of engineering, a testament to the ingenuity of an ancient civilization, and yet it raises more questions than it answers. Dating back to around 100 BC, the mechanism's complexity suggests knowledge and technology far beyond what was believed possible for that time. How could people in an era without electricity, without the advanced metals and tools of today, have created something so intricate? What was its true purpose, and who were the creators behind it? At first glance, the Antikythera mechanism looks like nothing more than a collection of broken gears and cogs, seemingly random pieces of metal salvaged from the wreck. But when reconstructed, its function begins to unfold: a sophisticated system of interlocking gears designed to track the movements of the sun, the moon, and the planets. It was, in essence, a mechanical model of the cosmos, capable of predicting astronomical events like eclipses and the positions of the stars. The device's primary function seems to have been as an astronomical calendar, an ancient tool for predicting celestial events, possibly used for religious ceremonies, navigation, or agricultural planning. But the level of precision it displays is startling. The gears are arranged in a way that suggests the Greeks of the time possessed knowledge of complex mathematical principles and mechanical engineering that, until its discovery, were thought to have been developed only centuries later. In the years since the mechanism's recovery, historians and scientists have attempted to piece together its full story. The majority of experts agree on its purpose, an ancient analog computer designed to map the heavens. But beyond that, the true origins and creators of the device remain a mystery. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Antikythera mechanism is the absence of any other similar devices from its time. While ancient cultures certainly had a rich tradition of astronomy, no other artifact from the Hellenistic period, or indeed from any known ancient civilization, demonstrates such technical mastery. How could the Greeks have developed such a device, seemingly out of nowhere, without leaving behind other examples of similar technology? Did they simply possess knowledge and skill that has been lost to time? Or is there another explanation? Many historians point to the idea that the mechanism's creators were not entirely of the Greek world. One theory suggests that the device may have been inspired by foreign knowledge, perhaps from the Egyptians or the Babylonians, civilizations known for their advanced understanding of astronomy and mathematics. The Greeks, ever adaptable, may have incorporated these ideas into their own technological developments, creating the mechanism as a way to blend both their own intellectual tradition and the foreign influences they encountered through trade and conquest. But this explanation also raises questions. If the knowledge to construct such a device was indeed borrowed, then why was it lost again? Why didn't the Greeks, or any civilization after them, continue to refine this technology? For centuries, the Antikythera mechanism remained forgotten, hidden beneath the Mediterranean waves, until the divers stumbled upon it. Could it be that the device and the knowledge it represents were deliberately hidden away, perhaps to protect it from misuse or from falling into the wrong hands? Another intriguing possibility involves the potential influence of the broader Mediterranean world. The mechanism's design is so sophisticated that it has led some scholars to suggest it may have been the work of a secretive group or school of thought, an ancient society with knowledge of mathematics and astronomy that was not widely shared or understood. Could the creators of the Antikythera mechanism have been part of an intellectual tradition that has since been lost? A secret society of scholars whose understanding of the cosmos was far beyond what we now attribute to the ancient world? Then there are the more speculative theories, ones that venture into the realms of the extraordinary. Could the Antikythera mechanism be evidence of ancient advanced technology that was somehow rediscovered in modern times? Some have even suggested the possibility that the device could be the work of an earlier, more technologically advanced civilization, one that existed long before the Greeks and perhaps before the Egyptians. If true, this would challenge everything we know about human history, suggesting that humanity had reached a level of sophistication long before the rise of known ancient civilizations. It's a thought that borders on the fantastical. After all, the idea that a highly advanced civilization existed thousands of years ago, one that was capable of constructing devices far beyond the abilities of their time, seems improbable. And yet, when we look at the Antikythera mechanism, it's hard to ignore the possibility that the creators of this ancient device were more advanced than we ever imagined. As we pause to reflect on the Antikythera mechanism's mysterious origins, we are left with more questions than answers. Was it the product of Greek ingenuity? Or did it have roots in a lost tradition of knowledge from another culture? What secrets lie hidden in its intricate gears, waiting to be unlocked by future generations? And most perplexing of all, why did such an advanced piece of technology vanish from history, only to resurface centuries later, shrouded in mystery? The Antikythera mechanism may be a glimpse into the technological sophistication of a long-lost world, or it may be something more, something that challenges our understanding of history itself. As we continue to search for answers, we must wonder, is the true story of the Antikythera mechanism still hidden beneath the layers of time, waiting to be discovered? Or is it a riddle we are not yet ready to solve? As we continue our journey through some of the most peculiar and unsettling mysteries in history, we now turn to an event that sent waves of terror and confusion through the ancient world. It was a phenomenon that, for centuries, has been recorded across the Roman Empire, an event so bizarre that it defied all rational explanation. A strange, unsettling rain fell from the skies, not water, but blood. For a time, the very nature of this rain of blood would haunt the minds of those who witnessed it, as it appeared at the most inopportune of times, coinciding with moments of great uncertainty and upheaval. The earliest accounts of this phenomenon come from the annals of Roman historians, who documented strange and unsettling occurrences in the skies. One such event was reported by the historian Pliny the Elder in the 1st century A.D., who chronicled a rain of blood that fell across various regions of the empire. This was not the only account, however. Several other historians, including Tacitus and Suetonius, make mention of similar events, all occurring at different points in history, but each one described with chilling detail. The phenomenon was not confined to one particular region of the Roman world. It was reported in diverse locations, from the heart of Rome itself to the farthest reaches of its empire in Gaul and Hispania. In some cases, the blood-like rain fell in the midst of great battles or during periods of political instability. These events were often seen as omens, signs from the gods warning of impending disaster or the downfall of powerful rulers. One of the most vivid descriptions comes from the Roman historian Tacitus, who wrote of a red rain that fell over the city of Rome in 104 BC. According to Tacitus, the rain was so thick and strange that it stained everything it touched. The ground, the clothing of those caught in it, and even the faces of the people were reportedly covered in a crimson hue. This blood-red rain, however, was not limited to the city. It appeared across vast stretches of the empire, raising questions among the people. What could such an unnatural event signify? Was it a divine message, or was there a more earthly explanation? The timing of these events is perhaps the most mysterious aspect of the Reign of Blood. Many of these occurrences were seen just before major upheavals in the Roman world, during moments of political change, before the eruption of violence, or as empires fell into decline. Some historians argue that these phenomena were merely symbolic, a reflection of the turmoil and dread of the times. The ancients, after all, were quick to interpret unusual events as omens. If something as unusual as a red rain fell from the sky, surely the gods were trying to communicate. But what could possibly explain this strange event? Was it a true supernatural occurrence, or could there be a natural explanation that the ancients simply could not comprehend? Some theories have suggested that what the Romans witnessed could have been a form of red-tinted rain brought on by meteorological conditions, such as the presence of dust or algae in the atmosphere. For instance, during times of volcanic eruptions, fine ash particles can be suspended in the air, sometimes creating a reddish tint when the light interacts with them. Similarly, certain species of algae can produce a reddish color when they bloom, potentially contaminating the rainwater in specific areas. These natural occurrences might explain the unusual color of the rain, though it would still leave the question of why it seemed to fall at such opportune moments, as if it were an omen. Other scholars, however, argue that the Reign of Blood may have been a collective hallucination or mass hysteria, fueled by fear and superstition. In ancient Rome, the people were deeply influenced by their religious beliefs, and any strange event could easily be interpreted as a divine message. Perhaps in times of great turmoil, when the political landscape was unstable, the people were prone to seeing signs where none existed. In this view, the blood rain was not a physical phenomenon at all, but a psychological one, a symbol of the dread and uncertainty that gripped the Roman world. Yet, even as we explore these natural and psychological explanations, something about the Reign of Blood remains unsettling. After all, these occurrences were not fleeting or rare. They were recorded multiple times across different periods of Roman history, and many of the accounts are remarkably consistent. Could it be that the phenomenon was more than just a coincidence? Was it a supernatural event, or perhaps an unknown natural event that has since been lost to time? Some of the more fringe theories venture into even stranger territory. Some have suggested that the red rain could have been caused by extraterrestrial activity, with particles or spores from an alien source falling to Earth. While this might seem outlandish to some, it's important to note that the ancients, without the knowledge of modern science, would have had no way of understanding such an event. They would have had no frame of reference for what we might now call a meteor shower, or a phenomenon such as red rain caused by microscopic algae or airborne dust. Another theory posits that the blood-like rain may have been a byproduct of a more terrestrial source, possibly a form of biological warfare. In the Roman Empire, wars and military campaigns were frequent, and many of the descriptions of the Reign of Blood coincide with moments of heavy conflict. Could it be that the blood rain was the result of some unknown biological agent? Perhaps one linked to the diseases carried by armies, or an early form of chemical warfare. While this idea remains speculative, it is not beyond the realm of possibility. However, the most compelling mystery may lie in the symbolic significance of these events. In the context of Roman society, the appearance of red rain was undeniably linked to feelings of fear and foreboding. It was seen as an omen, a warning from the gods of disaster or destruction. Whether the cause was natural, psychological, or something else entirely, the event resonated deeply with the people of the time. It was a sign of change, a harbinger of something unknown, yet unavoidable. Could the rain of blood be a reflection of something much deeper? An ancient, collective, unconscious fear of the unknown forces that controlled their world? What did the ancient Romans see when they looked up at the sky and saw that crimson downpour? Was it a divine message, or something more? As we reflect on this haunting chapter of history, we are left with a chilling thought. The rain of blood has remained an unsolved mystery, one that is unlikely to ever be fully understood. Despite the theories and speculations, the true cause of these strange events may be hidden forever, lost in the mists of time. And perhaps, in that uncertainty, lies the true mystery, the unanswered question that lingers in the minds of those who continue to search for the truth. What was it that fell from the sky, and what did it mean? As we journey deeper into the enigmatic corners of history, we come across a site that, for centuries, has whispered its secrets to those who dare to listen. Skara Brae, located on the Orkney Islands off the northern coast of Scotland, is one of the most well-preserved prehistoric settlements in the world. Here, nestled against the windswept shores, lie the remains of a village dating back to around 3200 BC, older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt, older than Stonehenge. Skara Brae offers an extraordinary glimpse into the lives of a people who lived long before written history, yet there is a chilling mystery surrounding it. Why did they suddenly abandon this thriving settlement? The site, uncovered in the 19th century after a fierce storm blew away the earth and sand that had concealed it for millennia, consists of a cluster of stone-built houses, each one connected by narrow passageways. The buildings are remarkably well preserved, with stone furniture, including beds, dressers, and even storage bins, still visible inside their rooms. The ingenuity of the people who built Skara Brae is striking. Their use of locally sourced materials, their ability to create durable homes in such a harsh environment, and their understanding of how to weather the unforgiving winds and storms that frequently battered the island. At its peak, Skara Brae may have housed around 50 people, but the settlement's size and structure suggest that it was more than just a simple village. It was a well-organized community. The presence of tools, ornaments, and pottery implies a culture that valued craftsmanship, and the fact that the houses are connected by passageways suggests a degree of cooperation and social cohesion. The residents of Skara Brae, whoever they were, lived in harmony with their surroundings and thrived for several centuries. Yet, sometime around 2500 BC, the village was suddenly and mysteriously abandoned. There is no known written record or inscription that tells us why the inhabitants left. One theory, which has persisted for years, is that the climate changed in such a way that the land could no longer sustain the people. Around 2500 BC, the climate in the British Isles is believed to have become cooler and wetter. Perhaps, the theory goes, the crops failed, or the resources the people relied upon became scarce. The Orkney Islands, isolated as they are, may have faced severe shortages that made living there increasingly difficult. In this interpretation, the abandonment of Skara Brae could be seen as a simple matter of survival. Faced with the slow decline of their environment, the inhabitants may have decided to leave in search of better conditions elsewhere. But this theory raises more questions than answers. If the climate had become so inhospitable, why did the people not attempt to adapt or find a way to sustain their way of life for a few more years? Why were the homes abandoned so suddenly and with such apparent care? There are no signs of a battle, no evidence of conflict, and no indications that the settlement was destroyed or attacked. The buildings were left intact, their furniture and tools undisturbed, as though the people simply walked away. There is something eerie about the lack of any apparent disturbance. Why did the residents leave with no sign of struggle, and why did they never return? Another theory proposes that the people of Skara Brae were forced to leave due to some form of external pressure, such as an invasion or conflict with neighboring communities. While there is no direct evidence of this, it is possible that the Orkney Islands, like other parts of the British Isles, were subject to pressures from neighboring peoples, or even raiders from the Scandinavian north. The Orkney Islands themselves were a crossroads of different cultures, with people from across the North Sea trading, interacting, and sometimes clashing. Could it be that the people of Skara Brae were displaced by a group seeking control of the islands? The suddenness of their departure could suggest an outside force that drove them away, though again, there is no concrete proof of such an event. Some have speculated that a more mysterious force was at play. Could the people of Skara Brae have been part of a religious or spiritual community that experienced a sudden change in belief or purpose? Skara Brae, like many other ancient sites, was built with a deep connection to the natural world, with the alignment of the houses and the placement of certain objects possibly pointing to spiritual or ritual significance. Perhaps the settlement was abandoned due to a profound change in the community's religious or philosophical beliefs. There is a possibility that, for reasons unknown, the people of Skara Brae felt compelled to leave in order to follow a new way of life or a new spiritual path. One of the more speculative but intriguing theories suggests that the sudden disappearance of the Skara Brae inhabitants could be linked to a form of catastrophe, not necessarily natural, but perhaps a sudden environmental crisis that left no trace in the archaeological record. Could there have been a natural disaster, such as a tidal wave, a volcanic eruption, or an earthquake, that struck the region and forced the people to evacuate? In this case, the absence of destruction or signs of struggle could be explained by the fact that the people left quickly, possibly even with little warning. Perhaps the homes were simply abandoned in haste, with the residents never to return. The cause of such an event, however, remains speculative, as there is no direct evidence of such a catastrophe. But what if the answer lies in something much older, something that reaches beyond the understanding of the time? Some have posited that the people of Skara Brae may have been part of a culture that possessed knowledge and wisdom far ahead of their time, knowledge that was lost, forgotten, or deliberately hidden. Could it be that the inhabitants of Skara Brae knew something we don't? Perhaps they were connected to a broader, now missing tradition that has been erased from history. Could their sudden departure signify something more profound than a simple environmental or societal collapse? Could it point to an ancient understanding of the world, an understanding that was lost when the settlement was abandoned? What if, in the end, the mystery of Skara Brae's abandonment is not meant to be solved? What if we are left with only the shadows of a once thriving community, its story buried beneath the windswept hills of Orkney? There are many theories, but none that answer all the questions. The sudden disappearance of Skara Brae remains one of history's great unsolved mysteries. What caused its inhabitants to leave? Was it the changing climate, a conflict with outsiders, a religious transformation, or something far more mysterious? As we reflect on this puzzle, we are reminded that some secrets may be lost forever to the sands of time, and that history, no matter how well preserved, may never fully reveal all that it holds. As we continue our exploration of the world's most perplexing and unexplained mysteries, we now turn our attention to a truly astonishing sight, the Nazca Lines. Nestled in the barren, wind-swept deserts of southern Peru, these vast geoglyphs, some stretching hundreds of feet across the earth, have baffled researchers, archaeologists, and historians for over a century. From the air, they appear as intricate patterns etched into the ground, some resembling animals, others abstract shapes, and others still enigmatic lines that stretch across the desert in ways that defy simple explanation. The Nazca Lines, believed to have been created between 500 BC and 500 AD by the ancient Nazca culture, are a testament to human ingenuity and artistic vision. Some of the figures are as large as 1,200 feet in length, while the lines themselves stretch for miles, crossing hills and valleys without regard for the natural contours of the landscape. The most famous of these geoglyphs include the figure of a hummingbird, a spider, and a monkey, their forms so precise that they can only truly be appreciated from the sky. Yet the vast majority of these designs remain invisible from the ground, suggesting that they were created for a purpose that remains, to this day, unknown. What was the true purpose of these ancient carvings? Why were they created in such a remote and harsh environment, far from the fertile plains and bustling centers of civilization? Theories abound, yet no definitive answers have been found. Some suggest that the lines served a ritualistic or religious purpose, perhaps designed to honor the gods or mark celestial events. Others argue that the geoglyphs were a form of communication, intended to convey messages that we have yet to decipher. Still, there are those who speculate that they were created for practical purposes, perhaps as a guide for travelers, or even as markers for water sources. But none of these explanations seem to fully satisfy the mystery, leaving the question of their true purpose open to interpretation. One of the most widely accepted theories is that the Nazca Lines were related to astronomy. The Nazca people, who inhabited the region long before the Inca Empire rose to prominence, had an intricate understanding of the stars, the planets, and the cycles of the sun and moon. Some scholars believe that the lines were designed to align with celestial bodies, stars, constellations, and solar events like solstices and equinoxes. In this view, the geoglyphs may have served as a giant astronomical calendar, a tool for tracking the movements of the heavens and marking important times for ritual or planting. There is evidence to support this theory. The lines, for example, appear to be carefully aligned with key celestial events. Some geoglyphs, like the famous spider, seem to point toward certain constellations, while others align with the sun's path during solstices. The ancient Nazca people, with their rich understanding of astronomy, may have used these massive designs as a way to track time, to observe the heavens, and to guide agricultural activities. But if the lines were intended for this purpose, why did the Nazca go to such great lengths to create them in a way that could only be seen from above? If they were merely markers for celestial events, why were they drawn so large and so complex, seemingly designed for an audience that would be looking down upon them from the sky? This leads us to another theory, that the Nazca Lines may have been created for ceremonial or religious reasons. The Nazca civilization, like many ancient cultures, had a deep connection to the divine, and many of their practices involved rituals meant to honor the gods. Some researchers suggest that the geoglyphs were a form of offering, perhaps meant to appease the gods or to ensure the fertility of the land. This idea is supported by the presence of other sacred sites in the region, such as the nearby Chowchilla Cemetery, where the dead were buried with great care, suggesting a strong belief in the afterlife and the importance of religious observance. In this interpretation, the lines may have served as a kind of prayer or ritual path, sacred routes that were meant to be followed by pilgrims or priests seeking to communicate with the divine. The large scale of the designs, visible only from the sky, could be seen as a way to connect the earth with the heavens, a bridge between the mortal realm and the divine. But again, this raises more questions than it answers. Why create such massive geoglyphs that could only be seen from above? Could the ancient Nazca people have had access to aerial views of their land, or was this an entirely symbolic gesture, meant to be appreciated by the gods alone? There are also more speculative theories. some venturing into the realms of the extraordinary. Could the Nazca Lines be evidence of an ancient, advanced civilization that possessed technology far beyond what we know they had access to? Could the geoglyphs have been created by a group with knowledge of aerial photography, or even flight? This theory, though dismissed by many scholars, suggests that the lines may have been made by a people who had a far deeper understanding of geometry and astronomy than is currently acknowledged. Some even suggest that extraterrestrial beings may have been involved, with the lines serving as markers for otherworldly visitors, or perhaps as a form of communication meant to be understood from the air. While this theory remains highly speculative, it continues to fuel the imagination of those seeking answers. Another intriguing possibility is that the lines served a more mundane but no less important purpose, such as water management. The Nazca region is known for its extreme aridness, and the ancient people who lived there would have needed to carefully manage their scarce water resources. Some researchers have proposed that the lines, which often follow natural water courses, could have been used to guide the flow of water, or even as markers for underground aquifers. In this case, the geoglyphs may have been practical tools for survival in a harsh and unforgiving environment. But again, this theory does not fully explain the intricate and large-scale nature of the designs, which seem far too elaborate for simple irrigation purposes. What we are left with is a series of extraordinary, inexplicable lines etched into the Earth's surface, each one a mystery in its own right. Why were the Nazca Lines created? Were they a form of astronomical calendar, a religious offering, a practical tool, or something else entirely? The mystery remains unsolved, and with each theory, we find ourselves asking even more questions. As we stand before the vast desert expanse with its intricate designs stretching as far as the eye can see, one thing becomes clear. The Nazca Lines are more than just a curious relic of a bygone civilization. They are a reminder of the depths of human creativity, the drive to understand the world and the cosmos, and the mysteries that remain hidden from our view. Could the lines hold secrets that we are not yet ready to uncover? Could the true purpose of these geoglyphs still be waiting, buried beneath the sands of time, just beyond our reach? As we move forward in our journey through some of history's most baffling enigmas, we now turn to an object whose purpose has puzzled historians, archaeologists, and scholars for centuries. It's a small, yet strangely intricate artifact, the Roman dodecahedron. Resembling a perfectly crafted 12-sided polyhedron, this ancient object has been discovered in archaeological sites across Europe, yet its function remains an enduring mystery. The dodecahedron, typically made of bronze or stone, is a geometric marvel. Each of its 12 flat faces is a pentagon, and each one features a small hole, varying in size, positioned in different spots on the face. The object is small, often no larger than a modern-day fist, but its design, with its sharp, symmetrical lines and the precision of its construction, suggests a high degree of craftsmanship. These objects were produced during the height of the Roman Empire, between the 2nd and 4th centuries AD, but despite this, no written records exist that explain their purpose. Even more perplexing is the fact that the dodecahedrons were found scattered across a wide geographical area, from the British Isles to the heart of the Roman Empire, with no clear indication of what they were meant to do. To date, over 100 of these enigmatic objects have been unearthed, yet no two are exactly alike. Some are more finely crafted, while others are rougher, as if hastily made. The faces of the dodecahedrons vary in the number and size of the holes, adding another layer of complexity to their potential function. Were they a form of standard object used for a particular purpose, or were they personalized items, each one serving a different function depending on the maker or user? The fact that these objects do not appear to be mass-produced, but instead each exhibit unique features, has led some researchers to suggest that they were meant for specific individuals or groups. The most commonly proposed explanation for the Roman dodecahedrons is that they were some sort of religious or ceremonial object. Given their sophisticated design and the apparent care with which they were crafted, some scholars have suggested that the dodecahedron could have been used in rituals or as a symbol of divine authority. However, no clear evidence links the dodecahedrons to any known Roman deity or ritual practice, and no inscriptions have been found on the objects to suggest any religious affiliation. This leaves us to wonder, could these objects have been more than just symbols of religious significance? Another theory posits that the Roman dodecahedron was a tool, perhaps a measuring instrument. The placement of the holes on each face of the object suggests it could have been used to measure the angles of light or to assist in some form of astronomical observation. Some have speculated that the dodecahedron was used as a type of sundial or a device for calculating time based on the position of the sun. This theory is bolstered by the fact that the Romans were highly advanced in their understanding of astronomy and timekeeping, and they often employed complex instruments to aid in their daily life. However, despite this possibility, no concrete evidence has been found to show that the dodecahedron was used for such purposes. Furthermore, the variations in the size of the holes on the faces of the objects make it unlikely that the dodecahedrons were all designed for a singular function. Another possibility is that these objects were some form of educational tool, perhaps used in schools or training environments to teach geometry, mathematics, or engineering. The precise nature of the dodecahedron's shape and the consistent use of pentagonal faces suggests a familiarity with geometry, and Roman education often placed a significant emphasis on mathematical learning. Could these dodecahedrons have been used as physical models to teach students about shapes, angles, and measurements? It's a plausible theory, but again, there is no direct evidence to support it. The lack of any records documenting the use of the dodecahedrons in educational contexts leaves this theory speculative at best. Then, there is the suggestion that the dodecahedrons could have served a more mundane, practical purpose, perhaps as a tool used in military or agricultural contexts. Some have speculated that the object was a type of wheel or axle cap, while others suggest it might have been used in some form of mechanical or hydraulic device. This theory is based on the object's geometric precision, which could suggest that it was designed for a practical, engineering-related function. Yet, like the other theories, this one too lacks any tangible evidence. If the dodecahedrons were indeed part of some larger functional device, it remains unclear what that device might have been or why these objects were so widely distributed across the Roman Empire. Of course, as with many ancient mysteries, the more fringe theories push the boundaries of possibility. Could the dodecahedrons have been part of an ancient form of advanced technology? Perhaps something akin to a computer or a device used in scientific calculation, far ahead of its time? Some enthusiasts speculate that the dodecahedrons could have had extraterrestrial origins, with their geometric precision and seemingly inexplicable function suggesting a link to advanced alien technology. While such theories remain on the farthest edge of plausibility, they highlight the enduring intrigue and mystery surrounding the object. The true purpose of the Roman dodecahedron may never be fully understood, but the mystery remains compelling. Each theory, whether based on astronomy, religion, education, or even extraterrestrial influence, offers a glimpse into the complexity of ancient Roman society and their knowledge of the world around them. The fact that these objects were produced with such care and skill, yet their use remains shrouded in uncertainty, suggests that the Romans were likely dealing with concepts and ideas we can only begin to imagine. As we stand before these ancient artifacts, we are left with one simple yet profound question. What function could these geometric marvels have served in the lives of those who crafted them? Were they tools of knowledge, symbols of power, or perhaps something entirely different? An enigma deliberately left behind, waiting for future generations to unravel? The Roman dodecahedrons remain one of history's great unsolved mysteries, and as we continue to explore the past, we are reminded that some answers may never be fully revealed, no matter how hard we try to look. What secrets do these ancient objects still hold, hidden in the folds of time? And could there be more such mysteries, scattered across the ancient world, waiting for us to discover their true purpose? As we ponder these questions, we are reminded that sometimes the most compelling mysteries are the ones that continue to elude us, no matter how much we search. As we continue to peel back the layers of history, we now turn our attention to one of the most awe-inspiring yet haunting mysteries of the ancient world: the collapse of Teotihuacan. Once a thriving metropolis that spanned over 8 square miles and housed upwards of 100,000 people, Teotihuacan was one of the largest cities of the ancient Americas. Its grandeur and sophistication rivaled any other civilization of its time, yet its fall remains shrouded in ambiguity and speculation. Located in the Valley of Mexico, just 30 miles north of present-day Mexico City, Teotihuacan's most iconic features are its monumental pyramids, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, along with the Avenue of the Dead, a wide ceremonial thoroughfare that stretches through the heart of the city. At its peak, around the 5th century AD, Teotihuacan was a cultural and economic powerhouse, influencing vast regions of Mesoamerica through its trade networks, military reach, and religious practices. The city's layout is equally remarkable. The entire urban center was meticulously planned, with precise grid-like streets, and its architectural wonders showcase a high degree of engineering skill. Temples, palaces, and residential complexes were constructed with a level of organization that would be impressive even by modern standards. The murals that once adorned its walls depict deities, rituals, and the daily lives of the inhabitants, offering a glimpse into a society that, in many ways, seems to have been both advanced and enigmatic. Yet, despite its grandeur, Teotihuacan collapsed suddenly and mysteriously around 600 AD, leaving behind empty streets, abandoned homes, and charred remains. No written records have been found to explain the cause of the city's demise, and the reasons for its fall remain a subject of intense debate. What happened to the people of Teotihuacan? Was it the result of internal strife, external invasion, or some other factor entirely? The absence of direct evidence leaves us with more questions than answers. One theory suggests that the collapse was due to internal conflict. As the city grew larger and more powerful, it may have become increasingly difficult to manage. Social inequality, political unrest, and power struggles within the ruling elite could have fractured the city's unity. Evidence of widespread fires and the destruction of key buildings, such as the once grand palace of Quetzalcoatl, supports the idea that the collapse was violent. The burning of important structures may have been the result of an uprising or rebellion, possibly led by a faction that opposed the ruling class or a religious institution. This theory is further bolstered by the discovery of human remains in the ruins of Teotihuacan. Some of these individuals show signs of violence, including skeletal trauma and injuries that suggest warfare or ritual sacrifice. The idea that the collapse of Teotihuacan could have been precipitated by a violent internal struggle is compelling, especially given the sheer scale of destruction that can be seen in some parts of the city. The fact that the city's grand architecture was destroyed in such a manner indicates that whatever happened, it was a rupture, something that fractured the social and political fabric of the civilization. But the theory of internal collapse doesn't fully account for the suddenness of Teotihuacan's fall. While internal conflict could explain some of the damage, it doesn't explain why the city was abandoned so abruptly, or why the population seems to have dispersed so quickly. If the collapse had been the result of a slow decline, surely some parts of the city would have remained inhabited, but the evidence points to the rapid desertion of the city as a whole. What could have caused such a dramatic and complete collapse? Another popular theory is that the fall of Teotihuacan was caused by external forces, specifically invasion. During its peak, Teotihuacan exerted significant influence over neighboring regions, and it is believed that it may have had military conflicts with other powerful groups. The most likely candidates for this invasion theory are the Toltecs, another Mesoamerican civilization that rose to prominence in the centuries following Teotihuacan's collapse. It's possible that the Toltecs, seeking to expand their own empire or avenge some slight, invaded Teotihuacan, leading to its eventual destruction. Yet there is little direct evidence to support the idea of an external military conquest. Although some researchers point to the archaeological remnants of weapons and fortifications in the area, there is no clear evidence of large-scale warfare or the presence of invading forces. Additionally, the absence of written records from the Teotihuacan era makes it difficult to substantiate claims of invasion, leaving this theory somewhat speculative. Could the people of Teotihuacan have been overthrown without any lasting record of the invaders? Or could it have been a series of smaller, isolated attacks that chipped away at the city's power and stability over time? While internal strife and invasion remain two of the most widely discussed explanations for Teotihuacan's collapse, there are other, more environmental theories to consider. Could a shift in the climate or a catastrophic environmental event have played a role in the city's downfall? Teotihuacan was built in an arid region, and its reliance on agriculture would have made it vulnerable to changes in weather patterns. A prolonged drought, for example, could have severely disrupted the food supply and led to the collapse of the city's infrastructure. The Valley of Mexico has experienced periods of extreme droughts in the past, and it is possible that such an event triggered a collapse in both the agricultural and social systems of Teotihuacan. There are also indications that the area surrounding Teotihuacan underwent significant environmental stress during the time of its decline. Deforestation, caused by the city's massive construction projects and growing population, may have also contributed to soil erosion and a reduced ability to produce food. As the natural resources of the region became strained, tensions may have increased, exacerbating existing social and political problems. Some even suggest that the collapse of Teotihuacan could have been caused by a combination of factors, such as a sudden environmental disaster, internal strife, and external pressures. The convergence of these elements could have created the perfect storm, resulting in the rapid collapse of a civilization that had once seemed invincible. But despite the many theories, the true cause of the fall of Teotihuacan remains elusive. What we do know is that the city, once a beacon of power and innovation, was abandoned in a way that has left us with only fragments of its past. The last inhabitants of the city left behind only ruins, burned buildings, and unanswered questions. Could there be something more that we haven't yet discovered, hidden in the layers of Teotihuacan's ruins, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? Or have we reached the end of the line, with this mystery destined to remain unsolved forever? The collapse of Teotihuacan remains one of history's most enduring riddles, and as we continue to look for answers, we are reminded of the fragile nature of human civilization and how quickly even the mightiest can fall. As we continue to explore the most curious and baffling mysteries of history, we now find ourselves in the English countryside, where an unusual and haunting legend has lingered for centuries, the tale of the Green Children of Woolpit. The story, which has puzzled historians, folklorists, and curious minds for generations, is rooted in the small village of Woolpit, situated in the Suffolk countryside of eastern England. Here, in the 12th century, two children were said to have appeared, their skin a vivid, unnatural green, and their language and origins entirely unknown. The first recorded mention of the Green Children comes from two sources in particular: William of Newburgh, a 12th century historian, and Ralph of Coggeshall, an English monk. According to these accounts, the children, a brother and sister, were discovered in a wolf pit, hence the name Wool Pit, after wandering into the village. They were said to be dressed in strange, unfamiliar clothes, and they spoke a language no one in the village could understand. Their most startling feature, however, was their green skin. The villagers were shocked, and many feared the children were something otherworldly. As the legend goes, the children were taken in by the village, and over time, the boy tragically died. The girl, however, survived and slowly adapted to life in the village. Eventually, she learned to speak English and revealed the origin of her and her brother's strange appearance. She explained that they came from a land called St. Martin's Land, a place that was described as being perpetually dark and separated from the world by a river. There, everything was green, including the food they ate, which the girl claimed was some form of beans. The story of the green children has captivated the imagination of many, but it also leaves us with countless questions. What was the true origin of these children? Did they really come from a distant land, separated from the known world? Were they the victims of some strange affliction, or is there something more to their story that remains hidden, even today? The first theory posits that the children were the product of a fantastical, though perhaps not entirely unthinkable, supernatural event. Some interpretations of the legend suggest that the children could have been lost travelers from a remote magical land, perhaps even from another dimension or world. This theory leans heavily on the fantastical elements of the tale, especially the notion of a green land where everything, from the food to the people, is colored green. Could it be that the story of the green children represents a metaphorical tale of the unknown, an encounter with something outside the realm of human experience? Perhaps the land of St. Martin was meant to symbolize a place beyond the normal boundaries of the earth, a realm that defies our understanding of time and space. Another theory, which ties more closely with historical and cultural context, suggests that the green children were simply lost or displaced foreigners, possibly Flemish or other lowland children who had arrived in England as part of migration waves during the medieval period. During the 12th century, England was experiencing waves of migration and political turbulence, with foreign settlers arriving from the continent. It's possible that the children had come from a group of immigrants who, upon losing their way, found themselves in the village of Woolpit. Their green skin, then, could be explained by a medical condition known as hypochromic anemia, a rare disorder caused by a deficiency in iron or certain vitamins, which could cause a greenish tint to the skin. This theory is further supported by the idea that the children may have come from a poor or marginalized community. Medieval peasants, particularly those living in areas with poor nutrition and limited access to medical care, often suffered from health conditions that would have made them appear peculiar or abnormal. If these children were suffering from malnutrition or a rare illness, it might explain their strange appearance. In such a case, the land of St. Martin might have simply been a misunderstanding, a child's attempt to describe a distant place, perhaps even something as simple as the place where they had lived before they were displaced. Another more practical theory suggests that the children might have been part of a local group that lived in or around the area of Woolpit, but were unfamiliar to the villagers. The children could have been survivors of some tragedy, perhaps an accident or disaster that caused them to become separated from their community. They may have wandered into Woolpit, seeking refuge, but their unusual appearance and behavior led to the village's fascination and fear. The idea that they came from a distant and strange land, however, may simply have been an imaginative interpretation born of superstition and curiosity. But there is yet another theory, one that ventures into darker, more speculative territory. What if the children were not from another place or another time, but something altogether different? Some suggest the possibility that the green children may have been part of a secret, long-forgotten society, hidden away from the rest of the world. The mysterious green hue of their skin, their strange language, and their unknown origins could be signs of something deeper, something deliberately concealed. Were the children possibly connected to a lost or hidden group whose members had lived in isolation for generations, cut off from the rest of society for reasons unknown? This theory touches on the broader questions that have often emerged throughout history when encountering unexplained phenomena. From the enigmatic lost civilizations to the unexplained disappearances of entire communities, there is a persistent curiosity about societies that exist in secrecy or beyond the scope of known history. Could the green children, with their strange appearance and cryptic origins, have been part of a group who had lived in isolation, either by choice or by circumstance? Despite the many theories, the true origins of the green children remain elusive. Were they the product of a local legend, a supernatural event, or a simple misunderstanding that evolved into one of the most enduring mysteries in British folklore? We may never know for sure. The story of the green children is one of those enigmas that continues to provoke both wonder and skepticism, inviting us to consider the boundaries between myth and reality. As we reflect on this story, we are left with one lingering question. What if the green children's true origin lies somewhere between history and legend, somewhere just out of reach, waiting to be rediscovered? Could the strange tale of their appearance be a reflection of a deeper mystery, one that lies buried beneath layers of time and myth? In the end, the green children may remain one of history's most bizarre and captivating mysteries, a riddle that continues to puzzle and fascinate, offering a glimpse into the unknown and the strange. As we move from one enigma to the next, we now find ourselves in the heart of ancient India, during one of its most remarkable periods, the Gupta Empire. Spanning from around 320 to 550 AD, the Gupta Empire is often referred to as the Golden Age of India, a time when science, mathematics, astronomy, literature, and art flourished at an unprecedented rate. The achievements of this era would lay the foundation for many of the intellectual advancements that would shape the world for centuries. Yet, just as this golden age reached its zenith, much of the advanced knowledge of the Gupta Empire seems to have vanished, lost to time, wars, and the turbulence of history. But why did it disappear, and what was lost in the process? The city of Pataliputra, modern-day Patna, the capital of the Gupta Empire, was a beacon of learning and culture. It housed scholars, scientists, mathematicians, and artists whose work was recognized across the known world. The Gupta period was a time when Indian mathematicians, such as Aryabhata and Brahmagupta, made revolutionary strides in mathematics. Aryabhata, for example, proposed that the Earth rotated on its axis, long before it was widely accepted in the West. He also calculated the value of pi with remarkable accuracy, and is credited with the concept of zero as a numeral, a breakthrough that would transform mathematics forever. But even as the Gupta Empire produced such extraordinary intellectual achievements, much of this knowledge did not survive the empire's decline. Theories abound as to why so much of this advanced understanding, particularly in fields like astronomy, mathematics, and metallurgy, disappeared so rapidly, leaving behind little more than fragmented texts and vague accounts. It's as if an entire intellectual tradition vanished, almost as if deliberately erased. How did a civilization capable of such incredible advancements see its wisdom fade into obscurity? The traditional explanation for the loss of Gupta knowledge often centers on the political decline of the empire itself. After centuries of expansion, the Gupta Empire began to crumble in the 6th century, weakened by internal strife, invasions from the Huns, and the gradual decentralization of power. As the empire fractured, so too did its institutions of learning. Libraries were destroyed, scholars scattered, and the once thriving centers of intellectual pursuit fell into disrepair. The fall of Pataliputra, the empire's capital, marked a significant turning point, with many of the cultural and intellectual traditions of the Gupta period seemingly fading from view. However, this explanation does not account for the rapidity with which this knowledge vanished. The collapse of empires has often led to the loss of certain cultural achievements, but the intellectual legacy of the Gupta Empire was, in many ways, so advanced that it might have been expected to survive, at least in part. Was it simply the political fragmentation and external pressures that caused this knowledge to be lost, or was something more at play? One of the more intriguing theories is that the loss of Gupta knowledge was not just the result of external attacks or political collapse, but a deliberate attempt to suppress or control certain kinds of knowledge. In ancient times, access to knowledge often held immense power, and ruling elites sometimes chose to limit the spread of certain ideas in order to maintain control. In the case of the Gupta Empire, some scholars have suggested that as the empire began to weaken, its knowledge was deliberately hidden away or destroyed in order to prevent it from falling into the hands of those who might use it to challenge authority. This theory is especially compelling when we consider the importance of astronomy and mathematics in Gupta society, fields that were not only intellectual pursuits but also had practical implications in areas like trade, governance, and warfare. Could it be that such knowledge was purposely suppressed, with the very advanced ideas of the Gupta period deliberately hidden to ensure the preservation of power structures? This theory gains traction when we consider the eventual rise of religious orthodoxy in the Indian subcontinent. By the time the Gupta Empire began to decline, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism had already established strong institutional roots. During periods of religious consolidation, intellectual pursuits that conflicted with religious dogma were sometimes discouraged or destroyed. Could some of the scientific knowledge from the Gupta period have been viewed as contrary to religious teachings and thus abandoned or suppressed? While this is not a universally accepted theory, it highlights the potential role that religion and politics may have played in the preservation, or lack thereof, of this advanced knowledge. Alternatively, could the disappearance of Gupta knowledge be linked to something far more extraordinary? Some fringe theories propose that the Gupta Empire's intellectual prowess was so advanced that it may have been in possession of lost technologies or ideas that were far beyond its time, knowledge that, for some unknown reason, was intentionally erased or hidden. In this view, the scientific advancements of the Gupta period were not simply the products of ordinary human effort, but could have represented a deeper, perhaps even mystical understanding of the universe. Could the knowledge be lost because it was simply too dangerous or too transformative? If we entertain this theory, we begin to wonder whether the Gupta scholars understood the universe in a way that we still cannot comprehend. This line of thought leads us to consider the possibility that the Gupta Empire may have been in possession of secrets that were never meant to be known. Some have speculated that they might have had access to ancient wisdom, knowledge passed down from earlier, forgotten civilizations, or even from extraterrestrial sources, that would have radically altered our understanding of science, technology, and philosophy. Such ideas, of course, sit firmly within the realm of speculation and fringe theory, but they invite us to consider the limits of what we know and how easily knowledge can be lost, suppressed, or obscured by time. Another plausible explanation for the disappearance of the Gupta Empire's knowledge is the sheer passage of time. Over centuries, many of the texts, manuscripts, and inscriptions that recorded the knowledge of the Gupta period would have been vulnerable to natural decay, especially in the humid and monsoon-prone environment of India. Without the means to preserve such fragile documents, many invaluable works could have simply deteriorated and vanished over time. Moreover, with the disruption of the Gupta Empire's stable political environment, the loss of trained scribes and historians could have led to the inability to properly record or pass down this knowledge to future generations. Yet, despite the apparent loss, some remnants of Gupta knowledge did survive. Fragments of texts, mathematical concepts, and astronomical observations from this period have been rediscovered, though often only in incomplete forms. For example, the works of Aryabhata and Brahmagupta were rediscovered centuries later, and their ideas influenced not only Indian scholars but also mathematicians in the Islamic world and later in medieval Europe. Still, the complete body of knowledge, especially in areas like metallurgy and medicine, remains elusive. The disappearance of the Gupta Empire's advanced knowledge remains one of history's most intriguing mysteries. Was it the result of political collapse, religious suppression, or the gradual erosion of time? Or is it possible that we are only seeing a fraction of what was once known, an intellectual heritage too great to be fully understood, waiting to be unearthed again? The answers remain hidden in the past, but the question still lingers. What did the Gupta Empire truly know, and what might have been lost forever? As we turn our attention from one perplexing chapter of history to another, we find ourselves at the crossroads of a devastating pandemic that gripped the Byzantine Empire, one of the most influential and enigmatic civilizations of the ancient world. The Justinian Plague, which began in 541 AD, remains one of history's most significant but least understood pandemics. It ravaged the Eastern Roman Empire, decimating populations, altering the course of empires, and leaving behind a trail of mysteries that have yet to be fully explained. Imagine for a moment the bustling streets of Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, a city that stood as a hub of trade, culture, and power. The grand architecture of Hagia Sophia looms above the city, and merchants haggle in the shadow of its walls. But beneath this vibrant surface, an invisible threat lurks. No one knows exactly when the first signs of illness appeared, but by the time the plague struck, Constantinople was already a city of thousands, if not millions, of souls packed into its narrow, crowded streets. At first, it seemed like just another disease, perhaps a fever or a seasonal sickness. But soon, it became clear that this was something far more deadly. The symptoms were grotesque and swift. Victims suffered from high fever, chills, and severe body pain, followed by painful buboes, swollen lymph nodes that became the signature of the plague. The infection spread rapidly through Constantinople and then outward across the empire, eventually reaching parts of Europe, the Middle East, and even the shores of North Africa. The Justinian Plague is often credited with being one of the early manifestations of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for the plague of the Black Death that struck centuries later in the 14th century. However, what makes the Justinian Plague unique, and particularly mysterious, is the sheer scale of its impact and the anomalies surrounding its spread and effects. Historically, we know that the plague's first major outbreak coincided with the reign of Emperor Justinian I, a ruler who sought to restore the ancient Roman Empire to its former glory. But what remains puzzling is the rapidity and virulence with which it spread, particularly in areas that should have been less vulnerable. The Byzantine Empire had access to advanced systems of sanitation, public health infrastructure, and trade routes. Yet, despite these apparent advantages, the plague seemed to move with a ferocity that could not be explained solely by the natural spread of disease. Some modern scholars have noted the strange way in which the plague followed specific routes across the empire, defying traditional patterns of epidemic outbreaks. The disease initially appeared in Constantinople, but it didn't just spread in a linear fashion. It seemed to appear unpredictably in regions where one might not expect such rapid contamination. Why, for example, did the plague hit certain coastal areas with such force, while other, more densely populated regions seemed less affected? Could the plague have traveled along certain hidden or unusual trade routes, ones not recorded in contemporary accounts? Or could there have been other undiscovered factors contributing to the plague's sudden virulence? Compounding the mystery is the fact that, despite the significant toll the plague took on the population, Estimates suggest that as many as 25 to 50 million people across the Byzantine Empire died during its first wave alone. Many of the written records from this period remain sparse. Historical accounts from the time, such as those by the historian Procopius, describe the horror of the plague, but often lack detailed explanations of its origin or full scope. Procopius speaks of the suffering in Constantinople and the efforts of the emperor to try to control the disease, but little is said about the nature of the pathogen itself. Was it truly Yersinia pestis, or was there something more sinister, at play? Some have speculated that the plague could have been exacerbated by environmental factors, like famine or the movements of armies. The Byzantine Empire had been engaged in military campaigns during the early 6th century, and the stress of warfare, coupled with food shortages, could have weakened the population, making them more vulnerable to disease. But the way the plague moved, and the swiftness with which it struck, suggests there may have been more at play. Could there have been a mutation of the disease, something that made it more virulent? Or, even more intriguing, could there have been an environmental or even celestial factor, such as changes in the climate or an unusual shift in cosmic radiation, that exacerbated the spread of the disease? Another theory posits the idea that the plague's impact was tied to the empire's complex political and religious structures. With the collapse of local governance and military order in some regions, could there have been a breakdown in the empire's ability to contain and manage the spread of disease? Moreover, there are tantalizing references in historical texts to strange occurrences that some have interpreted as omens or supernatural signs. Could the Justinian Plague have been seen by some as a punishment from the gods, a sign of divine displeasure at the empire's overreach, or the moral decay of its leadership? The anomalies don't end with its strange spread. In the aftermath of the initial outbreak, the plague seemed to return intermittently, reappearing in waves over the course of the next 2 centuries. Each wave brought with it more death, more panic, and more devastation. Yet, the resurgence of the disease, spanning decades, seems to have occurred with a regularity that is difficult to explain. Did the plague simply ebb and flow in accordance with the natural cycles of disease? Or was there something cyclical or engineered about its reemergence? Could a hidden reservoir of the pathogen have survived in animals or humans, waiting to flare up again when conditions were right? Or was there a deliberate effort to reinfect certain areas, either as a result of warfare or political strategies? Perhaps one of the most mysterious aspects of the Justinian Plague is the lack of understanding of how it ultimately dissipated. After centuries of recurring waves, the plague seemed to fade away, as mysteriously as it had arrived. Historians have long speculated that the ultimate decline of the disease was due to the development of immunity in populations or changes in the behavior of the Yersinia pestis bacterium. But could there have been other, more hidden reasons for its sudden disappearance? Was there a sudden shift in the empire's social, political, or environmental conditions that led to the collapse of the plague's grip? As we peer into the centuries-old mystery of the Justinian Plague, we are left with many unresolved questions. Was this simply a natural outbreak of a highly contagious disease? Or were there other, less understood factors at play? Factors that remain hidden beneath the veil of time? Could the answers lie in the climate, the political turmoil of the era, or even in the very nature of the disease itself? The Justinian Plague's anomalies may never be fully unraveled, but the questions it raises about the nature of pandemics, their origins, and their impact on civilizations remain as relevant today as they were in the 6th century. What secrets could still be hidden in the shadows of history, waiting for us to uncover them? And how much of the past remains veiled in mystery, just out of our reach? The Justinian Plague, with its strange behavior and persistent enigmas, continues to challenge our understanding, reminding us that sometimes the most significant events in history are those whose true explanations remain forever elusive. As we journey through the annals of history, we now arrive at the enigmatic and ancient landscapes of South India, where the abandoned city of Vijayanagara once stood as a magnificent testament to one of the subcontinent's most powerful and prosperous empires. While the ruins of the city, with its grand temples, vast markets, and towering fortifications, have captured the fascination of scholars and adventurers for centuries, what many fail to realize is that the story of Vijayanagara is far older than the city itself. Beneath the imposing ruins of the 14th century metropolis lies an earlier, mysterious precursor, a set of ancient sites and settlements whose significance is still not fully understood. These forgotten cities, scattered across the region, may hold the key to unraveling the origins of the Vijayanagara Empire and its sudden rise to prominence. Yet, despite numerous excavations and studies, much about these precursor sites remains veiled in mystery. Let us begin by picturing the landscape of the Deccan Plateau, where the ruins of Vijayanagara still stand as a powerful reminder of a bygone era. The rocky terrain, dotted with boulders, crags, and sparse vegetation, stretches endlessly under the hot sun. In the distance, the jagged ridges of the Anantapur Hills rise like ancient sentinels, watching over the land. It is here, amid this unforgiving terrain, that the first precursors to the mighty Vijayanagara would emerge. But what came before the grandeur of the city we know today? What hidden truths about the rise of the Vijayanagara Empire can these early, partially excavated sites reveal? The precursor sites are scattered around the heart of the Vijayanagara Empire, with some of the most important located in regions such as Anagandi, Hospet, and Hampi, the very foundations of the later Vijayanagara city. Anagandi, a key site in this early phase, lies near the Tungabhadra River, just north of the city of Hampi. Archaeological evidence suggests that Anagandi was a thriving settlement well before the rise of the Vijayanagara Empire, possibly even functioning as a political and religious hub during earlier times. Remnants of temples, walls, and inscriptions point to a civilization deeply connected to both the natural landscape and the spiritual beliefs of the region. In these ruins, we find clues that hint at the evolution of the Vijayanagara Empire's architecture and urban planning. The temples at Anagandi, while not as grand as the later structures in Hampi, share striking similarities with the designs that would come to define the Vijayanagara style: vast courtyards, intricate stone carvings, and a deep reverence for Hindu gods. But these early settlements are much more than simple precursors to the city we know. They suggest a far more complex and layered history, one that intertwines the rise of the Vijayanagara Empire with earlier kingdoms, religious movements, and even forgotten technologies. However, while these early sites are recognized, their true significance remains elusive. It is not just their architecture that stirs curiosity, but the possible presence of a much older civilization that seems to have been well advanced for its time. Some researchers have speculated that these settlements might have been influenced by trade connections with distant lands, such as Persia, Southeast Asia, and the Roman Empire. The remarkable sophistication of the artifacts and materials found at these sites, carved stone tools, ornamental pottery, and even inscriptions, suggest that the region was more than just a peripheral outpost in the ancient world. Could these precursor sites represent remnants of a civilization lost to history, one that played a critical role in shaping the rise of the Vijayanagara Empire? One of the most intriguing aspects of the precursor settlements is the continued mystery surrounding the people who inhabited them. We know that the Vijayanagara Empire itself was established by two brothers, Harihara I and Bukaraya, who are believed to have come from a family with ties to the Hoysala dynasty. But what of the civilizations that predated their reign? Who were the people who built the temples and cities that dot the landscape? Were they simply local tribes or more cosmopolitan figures, influenced by cultural forces from across Asia, Africa, and the Mediterranean. A particular anomaly found at several of the precursor sites is the presence of massive stone monoliths and inscriptions in languages that remain only partially deciphered. Some of these inscriptions appear to predate the classical Tamil and Sanskrit texts of the Vijayanagara period. Could these early written records provide insight into the cultural and political foundations of the empire? Or might they be remnants of a much older civilization whose language and customs were absorbed and later forgotten? Further complicating our understanding of the precursor sites is the fact that many of them are remarkably well planned, indicating a level of urban sophistication that is unusual for settlements of this early period. Anagandi, for example, features well-structured streets and organized layouts, suggesting that the people who lived there were skilled in urban planning and engineering. These are not the simple, rudimentary settlements one might expect from ancient rural societies. The careful alignment of streets, temples, and even the positioning of buildings relative to natural features such as the river and nearby hills hints at an advanced understanding of geometry and astronomy. Was this a society that, like the later Vijayanagara Empire, placed great importance on alignment with celestial bodies and natural forces? Or could these early architects have possessed a knowledge lost to time? As scholars and archaeologists continue to explore these ancient ruins, some fringe theories have emerged that seek to explain the mysteries surrounding the precursor sites in more unconventional ways. One theory suggests that these settlements were part of an ancient network of cities built by a civilization that was far more advanced than we give it credit for. This theory draws comparisons to the lost city of Atlantis, suggesting that the region of South India might have once been home to a civilization with access to advanced technologies, some of which might have been rediscovered during the later phases of the Vijayanagara Empire. Could the unusual urban planning and strange artifacts be evidence of such lost knowledge? Other theories speculate that the ruins might not simply represent a precursor to the Vijayanagara Empire, but rather the remnants of multiple successive civilizations that flourished and fell over millennia. Could it be that the lands around Vijayanagara were the site of a much larger, more complex history of rising and falling empires, long forgotten in the shadows of time? Yet, the mainstream view remains that the precursor sites served as the early foundations upon which the Vijayanagara Empire was built, influenced by earlier kingdoms in the region but shaped by the unique cultural and political forces of the time. What remains certain, however, is that the sites offer tantalizing glimpses into a past that is still largely unknown to us. As we leave the ruins of Anagandi, Hospet, and other precursor sites behind, we are left to ponder what still remains hidden beneath the earth. The abandoned city of Vijayanagara is an enduring mystery, but the even older precursor settlements may hold the answers to questions we have yet to ask. What other forgotten histories lie buried under layers of rock and soil? What secrets could these ancient ruins still reveal, if only we knew where to look? Perhaps the true origins of one of India's most powerful empires are still waiting to be uncovered, locked in the silent stones of a long-lost civilization. The winds of history are often cruel, carrying away the treasures of civilizations before we can fully appreciate them. This is certainly true for the ancient library of Pergamon, an institution of knowledge and scholarship that once rivaled even the Library of Alexandria in its stature and significance. Situated in the ancient city of Pergamon, modern-day Bergama in Turkey, this library housed thousands of manuscripts and scrolls, many of which are believed to have been lost to time and the destructive forces of war and fire. But what truly happened to these works? What secrets did the library hold, and what knowledge has vanished into the abyss of history? Imagine, if you will, the grand structure of the Library of Pergamon perched atop the Acropolis of the city. The library itself was said to have been a magnificent building, filled with scrolls, manuscripts, and texts on every conceivable subject. Its location on the slopes of a great hill meant it overlooked the entire city, which was a thriving hub of learning, culture, and power. Pergamon was an intellectual capital of the Hellenistic world, and its library was home to scholars from all corners of the ancient Mediterranean. The library's collection, at its height, may have numbered in the hundreds of thousands of texts, carefully preserved in the famed parchment scrolls. The Library of Pergamon was not just a center of reading and writing, but a symbol of the pursuit of knowledge in the ancient world. It was here that scholars like Galen, the famous Greek physician, are said to have studied and written. The library's collection included texts on philosophy, science, medicine, history, and mathematics, many of which were the foundation of the intellectual traditions of both the Roman and later Islamic worlds. However, despite its importance, the Library of Pergamon eventually disappeared, leaving behind little more than fragments of its once vast collection. Much of what we know about the library comes from the writings of ancient authors who marveled at its grandeur and its collection of works. Yet, the true fate of its lost texts remains one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. To understand the mystery, we must first consider the library's origins. Pergamon was once a major center of culture in the ancient world, particularly under the reign of King Eumenes II, 197 to 159 BC. It was during his rule that the library flourished, with Eumenes even importing thousands of scrolls from other libraries, including the renowned Library of Alexandria. But it is not only the sheer number of texts that made Pergamon's library famous. It was the material upon which these texts were written: parchment. In the ancient world, papyrus was the most common writing material. It was made from the papyrus plant, which was primarily grown in Egypt. However, there was a shortage of papyrus in Pergamon, which led to a remarkable innovation. According to some ancient accounts, the people of Pergamon developed parchment, a writing material made from the skin of animals, after they were cut off from their access to papyrus. This innovation gave rise to the term pergamene, or parchment, named after the city itself. The production of parchment would prove essential not only for the library's vast collection, but also for the preservation of many works that might otherwise have been lost to time. But what happened to the library's extraordinary collection of works? The mystery surrounding its disappearance is as complicated as the ancient world itself. The most widely accepted theory is that the Library of Pergamon met its end during a series of tumultuous events in the city's history. In the 2nd century BC, Pergamon was embroiled in conflict with the growing power of Rome. The most notable event in this series of conflicts was the Roman siege of Pergamon in 133 BC, when the city was captured by the Romans. As part of the conquest, the library's collection, along with much of its treasures, was likely taken as spoils of war. Some historical accounts suggest that a large portion of the library's scrolls was transported to Rome, where they were added to the already massive collection in the Library of Alexandria. While this would have certainly preserved some of Pergamon's intellectual legacy, it also meant that much of its unique knowledge could have been lost, scattered across various collections that may no longer exist. Yet, this theory only partially explains the library's disappearance. If the library's manuscripts were transferred to Alexandria, why do we not have more evidence of these texts in later collections? Did the works of Pergamon simply disappear into obscurity over time? There are other possible explanations, ones that are far more elusive. One theory suggests that a massive fire, perhaps during the reign of Emperor Aurelian in the 3rd century AD, may have caused irreversible damage to the library. The city of Pergamon, like many other ancient cities, faced multiple invasions and fires, and the library's structure may not have been immune to these destructive forces. If this fire did indeed occur, it could have obliterated the manuscripts stored in the library, reducing them to ash and leaving no trace behind. But this theory, while plausible, still leaves many unanswered questions. Why, if this fire was so devastating, do we not have more concrete evidence of the library's destruction? The mystery of the lost library also raises a more unsettling question. Could some of its works have been deliberately destroyed? Ancient libraries were not just repositories of knowledge. They were also symbols of power. As different empires rose and fell, there were often deliberate efforts to suppress knowledge that could threaten their control. It is possible that some of the works held within the Library of Pergamon were seen as dangerous by later rulers. Could certain texts have been destroyed to prevent their spread? The Roman Empire, in particular, was notorious for censoring works that were seen as subversive to the prevailing political and religious ideologies. In this context, the fate of the Library of Pergamon could be seen as part of a broader history of intellectual suppression. But even with all these theories, we are still left with one fundamental question. What was lost? What knowledge, what ideas, and what works of art were contained within the library that have since disappeared forever? We may never know the full extent of its loss, but there are clues that hint at the true breadth of the library's significance. Some of the texts that are thought to have been housed in Pergamon, such as works by the mathematician Euclid and the physician Galen, are known to have survived through later translations and copies. But many others, including works by poets, philosophers, and scientists, remain lost to time. What might we have learned from these long-forgotten texts? Could they have offered us insights into the ancient world that would have changed the course of intellectual history? Could there have been works in the Library of Pergamon that predated even the classical Greek philosophers, offering us glimpses into a deeper past, one that we have no records of? The lost Library of Pergamon remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Its fate is still a matter of speculation, and its missing works continue to haunt the scholars who study ancient texts. The legacy of the library is both a testament to the brilliance of ancient scholars and a reminder of how fragile knowledge can be. What remains hidden in the ashes of time? What secrets could still be buried in the ruins of Pergamon, waiting to be rediscovered? Only time will tell. Only time. As we shift our focus from the lost treasures of libraries and ancient cities, we arrive at one of the most puzzling and enigmatic discoveries in modern archaeology: the mummies of the Tarim Basin. Situated in the vast expanse of the Taklamakan Desert, in present-day Xinjiang, China, the Tarim Basin is a desolate landscape where the wind sweeps across dry, cracked earth and the sun beats down relentlessly. It is here, in this unforgiving environment, that some of the most mysterious mummies ever discovered have been unearthed. Bodies that appear to defy everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. The story begins in the 1990s, when Chinese archaeologists, working in the heart of the Tarim Basin, stumbled upon a series of burial sites, deep pits where bodies were laid to rest in the dry, sandy soil. What made these mummies so remarkable wasn't just the extraordinary preservation, but the striking appearance of the remains. These mummies, some of which were discovered in such remarkable condition that their clothing, hair, and facial features remained intact after thousands of years, seemed out of place. They were not the typical East Asian individuals one might expect to find in this region. Instead, they exhibited features more commonly associated with people of European descent: fair skin, light brown or red hair, and even distinctively European facial structures. In the decades since their discovery, the Tarim Basin mummies have confounded historians, archaeologists, and geneticists alike. The question that looms large is, how did these people, whose physical appearance suggests a connection to ancient Europe, come to be buried in the heart of Central Asia, some 4,000 years ago? The mystery deepens when we examine the mummies themselves. Most of the mummies discovered in the Tarim Basin date back to the period between 2000 and 1000 BC, during the early stages of the Bronze Age. These bodies were buried in a variety of ways. some in simple wooden coffins, others in more elaborate tombs. But what they all shared was their stunning preservation. The dry, arid conditions of the desert have allowed these mummies to remain largely intact, their clothing and burial goods still visible and well preserved. In some cases, even the linen and woolen textiles, which would have disintegrated in more humid climates, have remained almost as they were thousands of years ago. The clothing itself is also worth noting. The mummies are often dressed in a style that suggests influences from far beyond the borders of what we would consider the known world of ancient Central Asia. The textiles, particularly the intricate woolen fabrics and woven patterns, bear an uncanny resemblance to the weaving techniques used by ancient peoples in Europe, especially those in the region we now know as the Caucasus. Additionally, some of the mummies have been found wearing elaborate shoes that are unlike anything typically associated with ancient Asian cultures. The presence of these foreign materials and techniques suggests that the people buried in the Tarim Basin were not isolated, but part of a larger cultural network that spanned vast distances. Yet, despite all these clues, the origin of these mummies remains unclear. Were these people early members of the Indo-European speaking groups, migrating from the distant steppes of Europe? Or were they a unique culture that developed independently in the remote corners of Central Asia? One theory suggests that these people were part of the so-called Tocharians, an ancient group of people who spoke an Indo-European language and whose name is derived from the region around the Tarim Basin. The Tocharians were later recorded by Chinese historians, but the relationship between these ancient peoples and the mummies of the Tarim Basin is still debated. The discovery of these mummies has led to a number of fascinating, if speculative, theories about their origins. One popular hypothesis posits that these people were part of the mysterious Aryan migrations, which many scholars associate with the spread of Indo-European languages across Europe and Asia. The idea is that these individuals may have been among the early wave of migrants who moved eastward from the Eurasian steppe, bringing with them their language, culture, and physical traits. The presence of their mummies in the Tarim Basin would suggest that this migration was far-reaching, extending into the heart of Asia long before the rise of the great empires of China or India. Alternatively, some scholars have suggested that the mummies were the result of ancient trade networks that connected Europe and Central Asia. The Tarim Basin sits at the crossroads of the ancient Silk Road, a trade route that would later become famous for linking the East and the West. It is possible that these mummies represent an early group of traders or travelers who made their way across the desert, bringing with them their distinct cultural practices. If true, this would suggest that the exchange of goods, ideas, and people across vast distances was taking place much earlier than previously thought. Adding to the mystery are the genetic studies that have been conducted on the mummies' remains. In recent years, scientists have analyzed the DNA of several of the mummies, hoping to shed light on their origins. The results have been both surprising and inconclusive. Some studies have suggested that the people of the Tarim Basin were genetically related to ancient populations in Europe, particularly those in the Caucasus region. Others have found evidence of connections to East Asian populations, suggesting that the individuals buried there might have been part of a broader, more complex genetic mix. The idea that these mummies represent a blending of different ancient peoples, some European, some Asian, is tantalizing, but it only adds to the mystery. If these people were of mixed descent, what does that tell us about the ancient world and the people who lived in it? Still, other theories posit that the mummies could represent a completely unique population, one that was not part of any known group, but instead an entirely lost civilization. Could these people have been isolated in the Tarim Basin for centuries, developing their own culture and language? Perhaps they were a remnant of an even earlier population that once inhabited the region before being absorbed into the later empires that rose in the area. If this is the case, It would suggest that the history of human migration is far more complex and intricate than we have been taught. One of the most intriguing and mysterious aspects of the Tarim Basin mummies is their disappearance. At some point, the people who created these mummies vanished, leaving behind only their preserved remains and the echoes of their culture. The reasons for their disappearance are still unknown. Did they succumb to a natural disaster? Were they absorbed into other cultures over time, their distinct identity fading into the broader fabric of Central Asian civilization? Or was their disappearance the result of something more violent, a collapse triggered by warfare or conquest? As we ponder the mystery of the Tarim Basin mummies, we are reminded of how much of our past remains hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. These mummies raise more questions than answers, suggesting that the ancient world was far more interconnected and complex than we can imagine. They challenge our assumptions about the movements of peoples and cultures across time and space, forcing us to reconsider the history of human migration and cultural exchange. What, then, is the true story behind these ancient people? Where did they come from? And why did they leave no trace of their civilization other than the mummies they left behind? And what might their genetic legacy still be telling us today, buried deep within the DNA of their descendants? The Tarim Basin mummies remain one of the great unsolved mysteries of human history, and their secrets are waiting to be uncovered, if only we can find the key to unlock them. As we continue our journey through history's strangest and most perplexing mysteries, we find ourselves drawn to the eerie and inexplicable phenomenon of the eternal lamps, mysterious oil lamps discovered in Roman tombs that, according to ancient texts, never seemed to extinguish. The idea of a flame that defies time and the natural course of decay feels more like something out of legend than historical fact. Yet these lamps have been recorded by ancient writers, and their story has fascinated scholars and historians for centuries. What were these lamps? Were they indeed capable of burning perpetually, or is there something more to this story, a secret waiting to be uncovered? Picture, if you will, the ancient tombs of Rome. These burial sites, often nestled beneath the bustling streets of the city or hidden within the rolling hills of the countryside, were not simply places for the dead. They were sanctuaries, where the boundaries between the mortal world and the divine seemed to blur. In these tombs, items were placed with great care: delicate pottery, ornate jewelry, and often oil lamps. These lamps, whose simple elegance belied their functional purpose, were believed to light the way for the departed spirit in the afterlife. But among the thousands of lamps found in Roman graves, a small number carried a strange and unsettling reputation. Some of these lamps were reported to burn, undiminished, for decades, if not centuries. Ancient authors such as Pliny the Elder and others recorded that certain tombs contained lamps which, once lit, never seemed to extinguish. In fact, some reports suggest that these lamps were still glowing when tombs were reopened, long after the death of the original occupant. Pliny, in his Natural History, mentions an instance where a tomb was opened, revealing a lamp that continued to burn, much to the astonishment of those present. What could account for such an extraordinary claim? Were these lamps truly capable of burning without end, defying the very principles of combustion? Or was there something else at play, some unknown mechanism or material that allowed these lamps to persist? Ancient civilizations were, after all, capable of remarkable feats of engineering, and the Romans were no strangers to developing innovations in all manner of technology. One theory suggests that the eternal flames were not truly eternal, but were the result of special oils or substances used in the lamps that burned in a unique way. Roman lamps, especially those found in tombs, often used a variety of oils, some of which may have been more refined or had properties that allowed them to burn longer than typical oils. It is possible that the lamp's design was meant to maximize the burning efficiency of these oils, keeping the flame alive for longer than one would expect. Some researchers have speculated that the ancient Romans might have discovered a form of lamp oil that was particularly slow burning or even, under certain conditions, self-replenishing. Others have suggested that the lamps were designed with a clever mechanism that allowed the oil to be continually replenished. Some lamps found in tombs feature complex reservoirs and tubes, which may have been part of a mechanism that automatically refilled the lamp's oil supply, thus keeping the flame lit for far longer than usual. This, however, raises further questions. If such mechanisms existed, why didn't they become more widely known or replicated in other forms of Roman technology? And why were these lamps so uniquely associated with the dead? Of course, the notion of perpetual flames brings to mind the possibility of something far more mysterious and speculative. Could these lamps have been part of a ritualistic or religious significance that went beyond their practical use? In the ancient world, fire and light were often seen as symbols of the divine, representing the soul's journey or the eternal nature of the gods. For the Romans, whose pantheon of gods and deities was vast and complex, the idea of an eternal flame may have symbolized the undying soul or the eternal presence of the divine. In this context, the flames in the tombs might have been considered sacred and imbued with spiritual power, giving rise to stories of them burning endlessly. But what if the story of the eternal lamps is not entirely grounded in material explanations? The idea of a supernatural or divine flame, one that burns perpetually in the tombs of the dead, taps into an even deeper cultural and psychological fascination with immortality. The ancient world, like our own, grappled with the mysteries of life and death, and the notion that a flame could symbolize the persistence of life beyond the grave speaks to a profound desire to connect with the eternal. Could these flames have been seen as a way to offer a link between the living and the dead, bridging the gap between mortal and divine realms? Some fringe theories even speculate that the eternal lamps might have been powered by some form of ancient, lost technology, perhaps a primitive form of what we would now consider battery technology, or even some kind of alchemical process that allowed for a self-sustaining light source. This idea, while intriguing, remains speculative, as there is no solid evidence to support it. However, the possibility that the ancient Romans, or even earlier civilizations, may have stumbled upon a method of generating light that we have since forgotten is a tantalizing thought. After all, we continue to discover ancient inventions and techniques that seem ahead of their time. Tools, mechanisms, and philosophies that hint at a deeper knowledge than we have yet fully appreciated. While mainstream historians and archaeologists have largely dismissed the idea of supernatural flames or forgotten technologies, the question remains: what truly caused these lamps to burn for so long? Was it an extraordinary form of oil, a hidden mechanical design, or something more enigmatic, an artifact of a culture that understood fire and light in a way we no longer can? Even today, the mystery persists. Some lamps discovered in Roman tombs have been found to burn brightly when uncovered, but this phenomenon is rare and cannot be fully replicated in modern times. In many cases, the flames seem to flicker out soon after being exposed to air, making it difficult to examine the lamp's workings in detail. Could it be that we are simply too disconnected from the methods used by the ancient Romans to understand how these lamps functioned? Are there secrets hidden in the materials or techniques that could provide a breakthrough in our understanding of ancient technology? As we reflect on the mystery of the eternal lamps, we are left with more questions than answers. Perhaps the most tantalizing of these questions is not just about the nature of the flame itself, but about the people who believed in its power. The ancient Romans placed great importance on ritual and symbolism, and the eternal flame was undoubtedly more than just a source of light. It was a conduit for something deeper, something that transcended the physical world. Could these lamps have been more than just a curiosity of ancient engineering? Could they have been part of a larger, more complex system of beliefs and practices that we are only beginning to understand? The eternal lamps of Roman tombs remain, for now, a mystery. One that invites us to explore the limits of ancient technology, belief, and the human fascination with immortality. What lies beyond the flickering flame, waiting to be discovered? Perhaps the answer is still out there, buried within the ancient tombs, waiting to shed light on the forgotten wisdom of the past. Until then, we can only wonder what might still be hidden in the shadows of history. As we journey further into the heart of history's most curious mysteries, we come upon the enigmatic and seemingly inexplicable desertion of the precursor settlements to Great Zimbabwe. The ruins of Great Zimbabwe, with their towering stone walls, are well known and widely regarded as one of the most remarkable architectural achievements in Africa. Yet, behind this grand legacy lies an earlier chapter of mystery. The settlements that once thrived in the region, only to be abandoned with little explanation. What could have led to the sudden desertion of these settlements, which were crucial to the rise of one of Africa's greatest civilizations? And what secrets might still be hidden beneath the dust of centuries? Great Zimbabwe, located in modern-day Zimbabwe, stands as a testament to the ingenuity and skill of the ancient civilization that once flourished there. The site, with its vast stone ruins, including the Great Enclosure and the Hill Complex, is one of the most iconic and well-preserved archaeological sites in Africa. Built between the 11th and 15th centuries A.D., Great Zimbabwe was the capital of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe and a major trading hub, connecting Africa to the rest of the world. The scale and complexity of its architecture suggest a highly advanced society, one that understood construction, urban planning, and trade in ways that were ahead of their time. But as we look deeper into the history of the region, we find that the Great Zimbabwe civilization did not arise in isolation. Before the rise of the kingdom, a network of smaller settlements spread across the region, early precursors to the greatness that would come. These settlements, which flourished between the 5th and 11th centuries A.D., were part of a broader societal development that laid the foundations for the kingdom. Yet, despite their importance, many of these settlements were abandoned long before Great Zimbabwe reached its peak. The reasons for this sudden desertion remain an open question. Imagine these settlements as they once were, a patchwork of mud brick and stone structures scattered across the lush plains of what is now southern Zimbabwe. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of several such settlements, each one displaying a unique blend of African and foreign influences, including evidence of trade with merchants from as far away as China, India, and the Arabian Peninsula. The people who lived in these settlements were skilled artisans, traders, and farmers, living in a society that was clearly thriving. Yet, at some point, these settlements began to be deserted, leaving behind only the ruins of a once vibrant culture. The archaeological record does not provide a clear explanation for this mass abandonment. Some sites show evidence of gradual decline, while others appear to have been deserted abruptly. There is no clear evidence of warfare, natural disasters, or other external pressures that might explain such a sudden exodus. While some settlements show signs of fire or destruction, these could be the result of local conflicts or even the natural wear and tear of time. What is more intriguing, however, is the absence of definitive explanations, no clear indicators of why entire communities, once so prosperous, simply ceased to exist. One theory posits that the abandonment of these settlements was tied to shifts in the natural environment. The region around Great Zimbabwe is known for its cyclic patterns of droughts and floods, which could have placed significant pressure on local communities. Evidence suggests that between the 10th and 12th centuries AD, the area may have experienced periods of severe drought. It is possible that, over time, these climate changes made it increasingly difficult to sustain agricultural production, leading to food shortages and a gradual decline in the viability of these settlements. As the resources in the area dwindled, it is conceivable that these early communities would have been forced to abandon their homes in search of more hospitable lands. However, the question remains: why did some settlements thrive while others disappeared? Why did the people of Great Zimbabwe ultimately find a way to prosper while their predecessors vanished? Was it simply a matter of environmental adaptation, or was there something more at play? Another possibility involves the rise of trade in the shifting political and economic landscape of the region. Great Zimbabwe was strategically located along ancient trade routes that connected the interior of Africa to the Indian Ocean coast. By the 11th century, the settlement was emerging as a major player in the gold trade, with evidence of trade with Arab merchants who had established a strong presence along the Swahili coast. Perhaps, as these trade routes developed and became more lucrative, the focus of settlement shifted toward the fertile highlands around Great Zimbabwe, and the older settlements were abandoned in favor of more strategic locations. It is also possible that internal factors, such as shifting political allegiances or evolving cultural practices, played a role in the abandonment of these settlements. The region's political dynamics were complex, and power may have shifted from one community to another over time. The construction of the monumental stone walls and towers of Great Zimbabwe may have symbolized a new era of political consolidation, where a new center of power took shape, drawing resources and people away from earlier settlements. Yet, even with these plausible explanations, there remains a deep sense of mystery surrounding the abruptness with which these communities were abandoned. Were they abandoned as part of a larger migratory trend, with people moving toward the emerging center of Great Zimbabwe? Or did they disappear for reasons that we have yet to understand? Perhaps reasons rooted in the spiritual or cultural practices of the time, reasons that defy our modern interpretations of history. One intriguing theory suggests that the abandonment of these settlements was part of a ritual or religious transformation. The people of ancient Zimbabwe, like many other civilizations, had a deep connection to the land and to their ancestors. Could it be that the desertion of these settlements was not simply a response to material conditions, but a reflection of a larger shift in worldview, a change in religious or cultural practices that led people to move away from their previous homes in search of something new? In this context, the rise of Great Zimbabwe as the focal point of religious and cultural life may have marked the beginning of a new spiritual era, one that required the abandonment of older sites. As we look at the ruins of these precursor settlements, one can't help but wonder what lies hidden beneath the earth. Could there be undiscovered tombs, ancient artifacts, or other remnants that might shed light on the reasons for their sudden desertion? Perhaps future excavations will uncover new evidence that will help to answer some of these lingering questions. What we do know is that the desertion of these settlements is not just a footnote in the history of Great Zimbabwe, but an integral part of the mystery surrounding the rise of one of Africa's greatest civilizations. As we dig deeper into the past, we are left with the haunting question of why these communities, so full of potential, simply vanished. What knowledge, traditions, or wisdom did they possess that we have yet to uncover? And how might their disappearance have shaped the future of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe? The mystery of the precursor settlements to Great Zimbabwe remains unsolved. The reasons for their abandonment may be lost to time, but the ruins still stand, a silent reminder of the complexities and uncertainties of history. What might we yet learn from the buried stones and forgotten foundations? Only time and further discovery can tell. As we move deeper into the maze of history's most perplexing and strange mysteries, we encounter a truly otherworldly place, the ancient ruins of Nan Madol, located on the small island of Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia. Nan Madol, often referred to as the Venice of the Pacific, is a vast complex of man-made stone structures built on a series of artificial islands off the coast. The ruins stretch across a landscape that is as beautiful as it is enigmatic. Towering basalt walls, vast courtyards, and intricate networks of canals, all encircled by the wild beauty of the Pacific Ocean. Yet, despite its stunning grandeur, Nan Madol presents a mystery that has baffled historians, archaeologists, and explorers for centuries. Who built this city, and how did they manage to create such a sophisticated structure using seemingly primitive tools? To visit Nan Madol is to step into a world that feels suspended in time, an eerie labyrinth of stone and water, shrouded in thick mangrove forests and the constant hum of tropical wildlife. The ruins cover a staggering area of over 200 acres, and within this sprawling complex are nearly 100 artificial islets, each interconnected by a series of narrow canals, giving it the appearance of a submerged city, its walls rising ominously from the ocean's surface like silent sentinels of a forgotten age. The architecture of Nan Madol is as astonishing as its location. The site is made up of thousands of massive basalt stones, some weighing several tons, that were carefully cut and stacked to form walls, platforms, and structures. These stones are believed to have been quarried from the nearby island of Temwen, a considerable distance away, and yet they were transported and arranged with remarkable precision. The scale of the construction is staggering. How were these heavy stones moved across the landscape without the aid of modern machinery? And how did the builders manage to create such complex and durable structures on a series of small, artificial islands, surrounded by treacherous waters and dense jungles? The questions surrounding Nan Madol are not limited to the logistics of its construction. Equally mysterious is the identity of those who built it. Theories abound, but there is no consensus. Some scholars suggest that the site was constructed by the Saudalur dynasty, a ruling family that established its dominance over Pohnpei sometime around the 12th century AD. According to legend, the Saudalur people were gifted with extraordinary powers by the gods, and they constructed Nan Madol to serve as their political and religious center. However, while these tales are compelling, they offer little in the way of concrete evidence. The Saudalur theory, while plausible, is far from definitive. In fact, historical records on the Saudalur dynasty are sparse, and much of what we know about them is derived from local legends and oral histories. This has led some historians to question whether the Saudalur people were truly responsible for building Nan Madol, or if they were simply the inheritors of a much older civilization. Could there have been an advanced culture in the Pacific long before the Saudalur dynasty rose to power? One whose knowledge of engineering and construction was far more sophisticated than what we know of the time? One of the more intriguing aspects of Nan Madol is the mystery of its apparent sudden abandonment. According to some accounts, the Saudalur dynasty ruled the island for several centuries, but by the 17th century the city was mysteriously abandoned. What could have caused such a dramatic shift? Was it the result of an internal collapse, a decline in resources, or perhaps the onset of a natural disaster? Alternatively, could the desertion of Nan Madol have been linked to the rise of new rulers or political upheaval? Or, as some have speculated, could it be that the city was simply abandoned because the secrets of its construction and significance had been lost, leaving it to fall into ruin over time? As we move deeper into the maze of history's most perplexing and strange mysteries, we encounter a truly otherworldly place, the ancient ruins of Nan Madol, located on the small island of Pohnpei in the Federated States of Micronesia. Nan Madol, often referred to as the Venice of the Pacific, is a vast complex of man-made stone structures built on a series of artificial islands off the coast. The ruins stretch across a landscape that is as beautiful as it is enigmatic. Towering basalt walls, vast courtyards, and intricate networks of canals, all encircled by the wild beauty of the Pacific Ocean. Yet, despite its stunning grandeur, Nan Madol presents a mystery that has baffled historians, archaeologists, and explorers for centuries. Who built this city, and how did they manage to create such a sophisticated structure using seemingly primitive tools? To visit Nan Madol is to step into a world that feels suspended in time, an eerie labyrinth of stone and water, shrouded in thick mangrove forests and the constant hum of tropical wildlife. The ruins cover a staggering area of over 200 acres, and within this sprawling complex are nearly 100 artificial islets, each interconnected by a series of narrow canals, giving it the appearance of a submerged city, its walls rising ominously from the ocean's surface like silent sentinels of a forgotten age. The architecture of Nan Madol is as astonishing as its location. The site is made up of thousands of massive basalt stones, some weighing several tons, that were carefully cut and stacked to form walls, platforms, and structures. These stones are believed to have been quarried from the nearby island of Temwen, a considerable distance away, and yet they were transported and arranged with remarkable precision. The scale of the construction is staggering. How were these heavy stones moved across the landscape without the aid of modern machinery? And how did the builders manage to create such complex and durable structures on a series of small, artificial islands, surrounded by treacherous waters and dense jungles? The questions surrounding Nan Madol are not limited to the logistics of its construction. Equally mysterious is the identity of those who built it. Theories abound, but there is no consensus. Some scholars suggest that the site was constructed by the Saudalur dynasty, a ruling family that established its dominance over Pohnpei sometime around the 12th century AD. According to legend, the Saudalur people were gifted with extraordinary powers by the gods, and they constructed Nan Madol to serve as their political and religious center. However, while these tales are compelling, they offer little in the way of concrete evidence. The Saudalur theory, while plausible, is far from definitive. In fact, historical records on the Saudalur dynasty are sparse, and much of what we know about them is derived from local legends and oral histories. This has led some historians to question whether the Saudalur people were truly responsible for building Nan Madol, or if they were simply the inheritors of a much older civilization. Could there have been an advanced culture in the Pacific long before the Saudalur dynasty rose to power? One whose knowledge of engineering and construction was far more sophisticated than what we know of the time? One of the more intriguing aspects of Nan Madol is the mystery of its apparent sudden abandonment. According to some accounts, the Saudalur dynasty ruled the island for several centuries, but by the 17th century the city was mysteriously abandoned. What could have caused such a dramatic shift? Was it the result of an internal collapse, a decline in resources, or perhaps the onset of a natural disaster? Alternatively, could the desertion of Nan Madol have been linked to the rise of new rulers or political upheaval? Or, as some have speculated, could it be that the city was simply abandoned because the secrets of its construction and significance had been lost, leaving it to fall into ruin over time? As we continue our journey through history's most perplexing enigmas, we find ourselves in the arid, windswept deserts of the American Southwest, where the ruins of Pueblo Bonito stand silent and mysterious, an ancient city that once housed some of the most advanced and influential elites of the ancestral Puebloans. Pueblo Bonito, located in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, is an awe-inspiring sight. Its sprawling architecture, constructed with thousands of meticulously cut stones, rises from the desert floor like a monument to a once thriving society. But as impressive as the ruins are, they also tell a story of disappearance, a story that has left historians, archaeologists, and anthropologists puzzled for generations. Pueblo Bonito, constructed between AD 828 and 1126, was the largest and most important of the Chaco Canyon settlements, a major center of culture, commerce, and politics in the ancient world. It featured over 600 rooms, great kivas, ceremonial chambers, and long multi-story buildings that stretched across the canyon floor. The site was carefully planned, reflecting a deep understanding of astronomy, with its alignments to solstices and lunar cycles suggesting that the builders had an advanced knowledge of the stars. For centuries, Pueblo Bonito was at the heart of a vast trading network, with evidence of goods arriving from as far away as Central America, Mesoamerica, and the distant coasts of the Pacific Ocean. Yet, despite the city's grandeur and the prominence of its inhabitants, Pueblo Bonito and its elite residents suddenly disappeared. Archaeologists have found no conclusive evidence of what happened to the people who once lived there, and while some explanations have been proposed, none fully account for the abrupt end of this once vibrant civilization. The disappearance of the ancestral Pueblo Bonito elites has become one of the great mysteries of the American Southwest. Imagine walking through the haunting ruins of Pueblo Bonito today. The sun casts long shadows over the stone walls, while the wind stirs the desert dust, whispering secrets from centuries past. As you trace the walls of the great buildings, your steps echo in the silence. You can almost hear the bustling life that once filled this space: traders, priests, craftsmen, and the elite rulers who made decisions that affected the entire region. Yet despite the city's grandeur, there is an unsettling emptiness, as though something vital and profound has been lost to time. The site was a center of power and culture for nearly 3 centuries. But then, sometime in the late 11th century, something happened. The ancestral Puebloans, once a highly organized and connected people, began to leave Chaco Canyon. The grand buildings, once full of life, slowly fell into ruin. The elites of Pueblo Bonito, the rulers and high priests who had governed the area, simply vanished. What could have caused such a dramatic collapse? Theories abound, but the truth remains elusive. One of the most widely accepted explanations is the environmental collapse theory. The ancestral Puebloans were heavily reliant on the region's agriculture, and by the late 11th century, a series of severe droughts may have made it impossible to sustain large populations in the desert. Chaco Canyon, once a vibrant hub, would have become a much harsher place as the water sources dried up and crops failed. As food and water became scarce, it's conceivable that the elite class, along with the rest of the population, were forced to abandon their homes and move to more fertile areas in search of survival. However, this theory raises questions. The ancestral Puebloans had a long history of adapting to difficult environments, using complex irrigation systems to grow crops in a landscape that, to outsiders, seemed inhospitable. Could a people so skilled in managing their resources have suddenly failed so catastrophically? And why, if the collapse was purely environmental, did the elites leave? After all, the ruling class, with its political and spiritual influence, would likely have been among the first to have access to the remaining resources. Another theory suggests political or social upheaval as a contributing factor. The construction of the grand buildings in Pueblo Bonito was not just an architectural feat, but also a symbol of power. The alignment of the city's structures with celestial bodies suggests that its rulers may have been attempting to use astronomy to assert control over the people, possibly invoking divine authority to solidify their rule. But what happens when the power structures that once held everything together begin to crumble? Could it be that the elites of Pueblo Bonito, in their pursuit of power, alienated the very people they ruled? Social unrest, rebellion, or a shift in power dynamics could have forced the elites to abandon the city, leaving behind a once thriving center of culture and influence. Adding to the mystery is the absence of any direct evidence of warfare or violence. While the ruins show signs of disrepair and some buildings were abandoned, there are no mass graves or signs of violent conflict. This suggests that the elites and their followers left voluntarily or were driven by factors that did not involve direct confrontation. Some have even speculated that the elites may have been overthrown by other groups, or that a shift in religious or cultural practices could have led to their downfall. But without definitive evidence, these ideas remain speculative. There is also the possibility that the elites of Pueblo Bonito were part of a larger migratory trend. Could it be that they were drawn toward a new center of power, perhaps influenced by the rising influence of other indigenous groups in the region? The migration theory posits that the inhabitants of Chaco Canyon, once a thriving metropolis, might have been part of a larger regional movement that saw entire populations seeking better opportunities or a new beginning elsewhere. But what if the disappearance of Pueblo Bonito's elites was not simply the result of external factors such as climate or political change? What if there were deeper, more mysterious forces at play? Some fringe theories speculate that the ancestral Puebloans had access to knowledge or technologies that allowed them to mysteriously vanish from history. Could they have had knowledge of ancient rites, rituals, or even the ability to move into different realms of existence? These ideas, though speculative, tap into the mystery of the site and the profound questions that remain unanswered. As we reflect on the disappearance of Pueblo Bonito's elites, we are reminded that many aspects of the ancient world are still shrouded in mystery. Could there be evidence buried deep within the ruins, hidden beneath layers of time and dust, that will one day reveal the true reasons behind their sudden disappearance? Perhaps future excavations or discoveries will shed light on the mysteries that have baffled historians for so long. For now, the haunting ruins of Pueblo Bonito stand as silent witnesses to a lost chapter in the history of the ancestral Puebloans. They invite us to question what we know about the past, to challenge our assumptions about human resilience, and to wonder what secrets might still be waiting to be uncovered beneath the desert sands. The elites of Pueblo Bonito may have vanished from history, but the story of their rise and fall remains one of the most intriguing and unresolved mysteries of the ancient world. What happened to them, and what can their disappearance teach us about the fragility of civilization itself? Only time may tell. As we move further into the depths of history's most perplexing and cryptic mysteries, we come upon a series of strange and elusive scripts found in the heart of Central Asia. These enigmatic inscriptions, similar in their elusiveness to the famous Voynich manuscript, have defied decipherment for centuries. Whether etched into stone, carved into clay tablets, or written on papyrus-like material, these early undeciphered scripts have long puzzled scholars, archaeologists, and linguists. Who were the people who created these symbols, and what secrets do they hide? What messages were they trying to convey, and why have they remained locked away from our understanding? The location of these scripts is as mystifying as the symbols themselves. Central Asia, a vast and often inhospitable expanse, has long been a crossroads for civilizations, connecting east and west, the steppes of the Eurasian continent to the great empires of Persia, India, and China. It is a region rich in history, yet still largely unexplored in terms of ancient texts and inscriptions. From the towering mountains of the Hindu Kush to the expansive Taklamakan Desert, Central Asia has witnessed the rise and fall of countless cultures and empires, each leaving behind fragments of their stories. And yet, scattered across this unforgiving terrain, in sites that range from the rugged valleys of Tajikistan to the ancient ruins of Uzbekistan, these undeciphered scripts lie in wait, offering no answers to those who seek to unlock their meaning. One of the most notable and perplexing examples of these early undeciphered scripts is found in the ancient city of Nisa, located near the border of modern-day Turkmenistan and Iran. The ruins of Nisa, which date back to around the 5th century BC, are believed to have been a major center of the Parthian Empire. Excavations have uncovered a wealth of inscriptions, some etched onto the walls of temples, others found on clay tablets, that appear to be written in a script completely unrelated to any known language. These symbols, though they bear some resemblance to early Pahlavi and Aramaic scripts, do not match any of the languages associated with the region at the time. The mystery of Nisa's inscriptions is just one chapter in a much larger story. Throughout Central Asia, from the ancient kingdoms of Sogdiana and Bactria to the lost cities of the Kushan Empire, similar undeciphered scripts have surfaced. Some are thought to be related to the mysterious Tocharian languages, once spoken along the northern Silk Road. Others bear no resemblance to anything we have encountered in the ancient world. They have baffled historians and linguists for generations, remaining resistant to all attempts at translation or understanding. The question is, why are these scripts so elusive? Are they remnants of a language lost to time, or are they a code, designed deliberately to conceal meaning from future generations? The more we investigate, the more we realize that the story of these undeciphered scripts is not just about language or communication. It is a story about what we can and cannot know about the past, about the limitations of our understanding, and the secrets that remain hidden, waiting to be unearthed. One widely accepted theory suggests that these early scripts could be the remnants of lost languages, used by civilizations whose records did not survive the ravages of time. Central Asia was home to many complex cultures that had rich traditions of writing, but those societies were often conquered, absorbed, or otherwise erased from history. Could these scripts be the last surviving traces of ancient languages, preserved on stone or clay, but forgotten as their speakers faded into history? If so, they would represent one of the last mysteries of a forgotten world. Language itself, preserved only in symbols, yet completely beyond our grasp. The Tocharian theory, which links some of these scripts to the ancient Tocharian languages once spoken by people who lived along the northern Silk Road, offers one possible explanation. The Tocharians were an Indo-European people who lived in what is now the Taklamakan Desert region, near modern-day Xinjiang, China. Their language, known as Tocharian A and Tocharian B, is known primarily through a handful of surviving manuscripts, some of which were written in a script similar to those found in Central Asia. However, the vast majority of their written records have not survived, and only a small number of inscriptions remain, many of them indecipherable. If the Tocharian hypothesis is correct, these early scripts might represent a language with Indo-European roots, an ancient bridge between East and West, whose echoes are still reverberating in the inscriptions left behind in the desert. Another theory proposes that these undeciphered scripts could be ritualistic or religious symbols, rather than functional writing. The sacred texts of the ancient world were often encoded in ways that were not meant for everyday communication. Many cultures, from the Egyptians to the Mayans, employed secret or esoteric languages to preserve sacred knowledge, and it is possible that the Central Asian scripts were designed to conceal their true meaning from outsiders. The symbols could have been part of a larger, hidden tradition, passed down through generations but deliberately kept from the prying eyes of conquerors or foreign invaders. If this is the case, we may be dealing not with a lost language, but with a carefully guarded script whose meaning was never intended to be fully understood by those outside the culture. In addition to these mainstream theories, there are more speculative explanations that continue to circulate among researchers. Some fringe theories suggest that these ancient scripts may not have been created by humans at all. Could they be the product of an ancient, lost civilization with knowledge far beyond what we would expect for the time? Or, perhaps more provocatively, Could they be of extraterrestrial origin, left behind by visitors from another world, as some fringe theorists have suggested? While these ideas remain firmly in the realm of science fiction, they tap into a deeper fascination with the unknown, an urge to explain the inexplicable by reaching beyond the boundaries of what we know. Yet, despite the many theories, the fact remains that these scripts, whether linked to Tocharian, a lost civilization, or something more mysterious, have so far resisted all attempts at decipherment. And therein lies the true puzzle. Why, after centuries of study, do these symbols continue to defy understanding? Could it be that they represent something fundamentally different from any writing system we have encountered? Perhaps they embody a conceptual framework, a way of encoding knowledge that is so alien to our way of thinking that we simply cannot decode it. Could the people who created these scripts have thought in ways so vastly different from us that their meaning is utterly inaccessible? As we stand at the crossroads of these mysteries, it becomes clear that we are still only scratching the surface. The scripts of Central Asia, like the Voynich manuscript, may hold knowledge that is forever beyond our grasp, or they may be the key to unlocking a deeper understanding of the ancient world. But the questions they pose are far from simple. Why were they created? Who were the people who left them behind? And why have they resisted all attempts at interpretation? For now, these scripts remain a tantalizing and unresolved part of history, their meanings locked away in a forgotten code. As we continue to search for answers, we are left to wonder what else lies hidden in the annals of time, waiting to be discovered, decoded, and understood. What if the key to these mysteries lies not in the symbols themselves, but in a completely different way of thinking about the past? The answers, it seems, are just out of reach, waiting for someone, somewhere to unlock them. The Sassanian Empire, which flourished from 224 to 651 AD, was a mighty power in the ancient world, its influence stretching across the vast deserts and mountains of Persia, from the shores of the Persian Gulf to the fertile lands of Mesopotamia. The empire was known for its military prowess, sophisticated governance, and grand cities, which stood as testaments to its strength and cultural achievements. Among the most striking features of the Sassanian Empire were its impressive border cities, strategically located fortresses that served as both military outposts and thriving urban centers, guarding the empire from external threats and fostering economic and cultural exchange. But these once vibrant cities, some of the most important settlements along the empire's frontiers, would face sudden, unexplained collapse. It is a mystery that has captivated historians for centuries. What caused the fall of the Sassanian Empire's border cities? How did these heavily fortified strongholds, symbols of imperial strength, go from bustling hubs of trade, governance, and military might to desolate ruins? Imagine standing at the edge of one of these long-abandoned cities, such as Gondeshapur, once a center of learning and culture in ancient Persia. The wind sweeps through the crumbling walls, carrying with it the faint whispers of the past. The great stone gates, now broken and overgrown with weeds, once stood strong, protecting merchants and scholars who traveled from distant lands to exchange goods, ideas, and knowledge. Behind those walls, doctors, philosophers, and engineers once thrived, contributing to some of the greatest advancements of their time. But now, only silence remains, empty rooms, fallen columns, and broken walls. What happened here? The border cities of the Sassanian Empire, like Dastgird, Kish, and Ctesiphon, were not only vital military outposts, but also cultural and economic centers. Ctesiphon, the capital, was a magnificent city, known for its vast palace complexes and grand architectural achievements. It served as the political heart of the empire and was a hub for trade between the East and West. Yet, in the centuries that followed the empire's decline, these cities experienced a sharp and unexplained collapse. The suddenness of their decline raises questions. Were they abandoned due to internal strife, external pressure, or perhaps a combination of factors that led to their downfall? One commonly accepted explanation is the military pressures exerted by external forces. The Sassanian Empire was perpetually engaged in warfare, most notably with the Byzantine Empire in the west and the Arab tribes in the east. These relentless conflicts drained the empire's resources, weakened its infrastructure, and left its border cities vulnerable to attack. In particular, the invasion of the Arab armies in the mid-7th century, which culminated in the fall of Ctesiphon in 637 AD, is often cited as a primary factor in the collapse of the empire's border defenses. However, while military defeat may explain the fall of some cities, it does not account for the sudden abandonment of others, which were not directly affected by invasions. Take Gondeshapur, for example. This city, located in present-day western Iran, was a major intellectual and medical center in the Sassanian period. Its famous academy attracted scholars from across the ancient world, and it was home to some of the finest medical schools of the time. Yet, by the 7th century, the city fell into decline. Why would such a vital center of learning, with its thriving population, simply vanish? Historians have speculated that economic factors may have played a significant role in the desertion of these cities. The Sassanian Empire, like many ancient empires, relied heavily on trade and agriculture for its prosperity. With the continuous wars, the empire's trade routes were disrupted, and its agricultural base weakened. This, in turn, may have led to the abandonment of cities that were once prosperous centers of commerce. As resources became scarce and the economy faltered, the once thriving urban centers were no longer able to support large populations. Yet, even as we consider the possibility of economic collapse, the mystery remains. Why did some cities fall into ruin almost overnight, while others continued to thrive for centuries after the empire's downfall? In the case of Ctesiphon, the city, despite being the heart of the Sassanian Empire, was not completely deserted after the Arab invasion. Although it never regained its former glory, it remained an important settlement for centuries afterward. In contrast, other cities such as Dastgird, once a thriving border city, were abandoned entirely, with no clear explanation as to why. This leads to a more speculative theory. Could there have been internal social or political factors contributing to the collapse? The Sassanian Empire was, at its peak, a highly centralized state, with an autocratic ruler, the Shahanshah, holding ultimate power over all aspects of life within the empire. While this system allowed for effective governance, it also created tension between the ruling class and the local populations. The aristocracy, composed largely of a small number of elite families, held significant power over the land and its people. Were the border cities abandoned because the local populations, disillusioned with the growing distance between the elite rulers and the common folk, rebelled or simply fled to seek a better life elsewhere? Moreover, the Sassanian Empire was deeply intertwined with the religious and cultural context of Zoroastrianism. The state religion, Zoroastrianism, emphasized the duality of good versus evil, with a heavy focus on the purification of the soul through ritual and sacrifice. However, as the empire weakened and new forces, such as Islam, began to spread through the region, there may have been a cultural shift that contributed to the abandonment of these cities. Were the people of the border cities no longer willing to adhere to the Zoroastrian faith as it was under the Sassanians? Was the rise of Islam an impetus for their departure from their former homes, or did a collapse of faith precede their abandonment? Some fringe theories have ventured further into the realm of the supernatural or otherworldly, suggesting that the cities may have been abandoned due to strange, unknown occurrences. In the desert regions of Central Asia and Iran, where these cities were situated, harsh environmental conditions can sometimes lead to unexpected phenomena. Could it be that natural events, such as earthquakes, plagues, or even mass hallucinations, contributed to the mass exodus of people from these cities? Some have proposed that the environment itself, with its unforgiving climate and seismic instability, may have caused panic or disillusionment, prompting the city's inhabitants to flee. Could there have been a mass belief in an impending divine retribution, causing people to abandon their homes in haste? The truth remains elusive. The Sassanian Empire was one of the last great empires of antiquity, and its fall marked the end of an era. Yet, the reasons for the sudden collapse of its border cities are still not fully understood. Was it a series of external pressures that led to their fall, or was it a combination of economic decline, social upheaval, and cultural transformation? And why did some cities, like Ctesiphon, persist even after the empire's collapse, while others vanished without a trace? As we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, the ruins of the Sassanian Empire's border cities stand as silent witnesses to a lost civilization, a civilization whose decline remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in history. Were they abandoned due to the ravages of war, the weight of internal strife, or the collapse of their once prosperous economies? Or were there deeper, more mysterious forces at play, forces that we have yet to understand? The answers to these questions remain hidden in the sands of time, waiting for the right clues to emerge and reveal the truth behind the enigmatic fall of these once great cities. As we continue our journey through history's most mysterious and unexplained phenomena, we come upon an enigmatic series of accounts that have perplexed historians, scholars, and even modern-day researchers. These accounts, scattered across medieval chronicles and historical texts, describe sky battles, events where strange aerial phenomena were witnessed by countless people across Europe and beyond. These recorded battles appear in different forms: fiery lights, enormous flying objects, and massive confrontations in the sky, often accompanied by sounds of clashing or combat. Some have been described as battles between fiery figures, others as formations of ships or even entire fleets maneuvering through the heavens. The idea of a battle in the sky sounds like something straight out of a myth or a science fiction novel. But these events were documented by people who, at the time, had no concept of modern warfare or technological advancements. Their accounts are both vivid and eerie, and yet they continue to elude any satisfactory explanation. Were they simply mass hallucinations, superstitions, or something more extraordinary? Let us start with a few of the most famous examples. The Chronicle of Saint-Denis, written in the 13th century, records one of the most well-known medieval sky battles that occurred in 1110 AD. In this instance, residents of the town of Chartres, France, were said to have witnessed a battle between fiery shapes in the sky. The chronicler described it as a great and fearful battle in the air, where squadrons of flying ships, each with sails and masts, engaged in combat. The battle was said to have lasted several hours, with the observers hearing a strange, terrifying noise likened to the sounds of clashing metal. Similar accounts come from as far as Germany in 1561. The Nuremberg Chronicle, a famous text documenting the events of the time, describes a celestial phenomenon that took place on April 14th of that year. According to the account, thousands of residents of Nuremberg witnessed a strange and chaotic aerial battle where numerous objects, resembling spheres, crosses, and even cylindrical shapes, appeared to engage in combat in the sky. The people who saw it described the phenomenon as having loud noises, akin to weapons striking one another, and they saw what appeared to be fiery projectiles moving across the sky. It is said that the battle ended with a bright explosion that caused the objects to crash and disappear. These accounts are not isolated. Similar descriptions of strange aerial battles can be found throughout the Middle Ages and early modern period. From Scandinavia to Italy, reports of strange lights and unexplainable sky phenomena abound. In Switzerland, for instance, a report from 1566 recounts an eerie battle in the sky, described as a conflict between a multitude of large spheres, some appearing fiery, others dark and ominous. The local chroniclers described the event in such detail that it's clear they believed it to be a real, physical battle taking place high above them. The descriptions from these medieval chronicles leave us with a number of unsettling questions. What were people witnessing? Were these accounts simply the result of the imagination running wild during a time filled with superstition and fear? Or, as some have speculated, were these phenomena the result of more extraordinary and unknown occurrences, things that still defy our understanding to this day? One mainstream explanation that historians have put forward is that these sky battles were nothing more than atmospheric phenomena, perhaps meteor showers, comets, or natural light displays such as aurora borealis. The medieval people, lacking the scientific understanding we have today, could have easily interpreted such events as celestial combat. In the absence of knowledge about the nature of comets or the meteorological conditions that might cause unusual light formations, many observers could have concluded that these strange, fiery objects in the sky were engaging in battle, especially if they appeared to move in a coordinated fashion. However, this explanation doesn't account for some key details in these reports. For example, the Chronicle of Saint-Denis specifically mentions fiery ships with sails and masts engaged in aerial combat, which seems more like a description of some sort of flying vessels rather than meteorological phenomena. In fact, several accounts mention distinct shapes, like crosses, cylinders, and even human-like figures, which makes it difficult to attribute these events simply to natural phenomena, especially when the descriptions are so consistent across different geographical regions. Could these sky battles be the result of misidentified military activity? It's a theory worth considering, given the proximity of some of these events to ongoing wars and conflicts. Were the chroniclers seeing military flares, explosions, or even the lights of aerial combat taking place between armies using early forms of rockets or incendiary devices? In the absence of an understanding of modern technology, the presence of strange lights and explosions in the sky might have been interpreted as some sort of celestial combat. However, even this explanation doesn't fully account for the sounds of combat described by some of the witnesses, which seems to suggest a more complex phenomenon than mere lights in the sky. As we delve deeper, we also encounter more speculative theories that attempt to link these sky battles to something even more otherworldly. Some have suggested that these accounts could be describing extraterrestrial encounters. Given the strange and sometimes seemingly coordinated behavior of the objects in the sky, some researchers believe that these accounts could be some of the earliest recorded encounters with UFOs. Could the people of medieval Europe, with their limited understanding of the universe, have been witnessing some form of extraterrestrial activity that they could only interpret as a battle between unknown forces? This idea, while intriguing, remains speculative, and it raises a more profound question. Could these events have been part of a larger pattern of contact with beings from beyond our planet, perhaps even visitation? There's also the theory that these sky battles could be symbolic or mythological in nature. In the medieval period, religious and supernatural beliefs were deeply woven into everyday life, and events in the sky were often attributed to divine or demonic forces. Perhaps these battles were symbolic representations of spiritual warfare, a reflection of the ongoing struggles between good and evil, which were seen in the context of Christianity's battle against the forces of darkness. Could these strange aerial phenomena have been visions or prophetic events, interpreted by chroniclers as battles between celestial forces? Another theory involves the possibility that these sky battles were part of a wider folkloric tradition, passed down through generations as tales of supernatural or divine intervention. In medieval Europe, stories of dragons, angels, and demons were widespread, and many of these tales involved battles in the skies. Could these sky battles simply have been oral histories of past events, shaped and altered by the imaginations of the chroniclers, rather than factual accounts of real events? Regardless of the explanation, what remains undeniable is that these sky battles have sparked the imagination of many, both in the past and today. They represent an enduring mystery, one that invites us to ask profound questions about how our ancestors perceived the world around them and how much of that perception was shaped by the unknown. Were these chroniclers simply describing what they saw through the lens of their culture and religious beliefs? Or was there something truly extraordinary happening in the skies above them? Could these ancient reports of strange and violent battles in the heavens be the earliest evidence of something much greater, something we still don't fully understand? The records of these sky battles remain unexplained and open to interpretation. The accounts of fiery ships, lights, and noise echo through the centuries, as tantalizing today as they were in the medieval period. What did these observers really witness? Were they seeing the birth of something new in the heavens, or were they simply telling stories in a world full of uncertainty and mystery? The answer, like so many others in the tapestry of history, may remain just beyond our grasp, hidden in the clouds of time. As we continue to explore the strange and enigmatic events that have shaped human history, we turn our attention to the mysterious occurrences recorded in medieval Irish monastic texts, events that have been described simply as fire from the sky. These reports, scattered throughout centuries-old manuscripts, detail a series of strange phenomena, often interpreted as celestial fire or rain of flame, witnessed by monks and scholars living in the isolated monastic communities of early medieval Ireland. Imagine stepping into one of these ancient monasteries. Tall stone walls, the scent of incense wafting through dimly lit corridors, illuminated by the flickering glow of candles. The sounds of chanting and the rustling of scrolls fill the air. It is here, within the tranquil confines of monastic life, where Irish monks meticulously recorded events and visions they believed were extraordinary or significant. Among their writings, the records of the fire from the sky events stand out as some of the most peculiar and difficult to explain. These events, which occurred during the 6th to 8th centuries, were documented in the annals of Ireland's most revered monasteries, such as Clonmacnoise, Lismore, and Kells. The descriptions vary slightly from one chronicle to another, but they all share common elements: the appearance of strange, fiery objects in the sky, often accompanied by intense light, smoke, and sounds that could be likened to thunder or distant battle cries. In some instances, the phenomenon was described as fire raining down from the heavens, striking the earth with terrifying force, leaving behind scorched ground. In others, it was reported as burning stars or fiery serpents descending from the sky. One particular incident, recorded in the Annals of Ulster, recounts an event from 664 AD, where a fiery rain fell across the land, burning crops, trees, and even buildings. The text described the phenomenon as an ominous sign, perhaps portending something catastrophic. Similar accounts appear in other records, where a cloud of fire or blazing lights were seen moving across the skies, sometimes in the dead of night, sometimes during the day. These strange occurrences, often described as foreboding or divine in nature, led many to ponder the true cause of the fires from above. But what were these events? Could they have been merely the result of the natural phenomena known to the medieval Irish, or was there something more enigmatic at play? To understand this mystery, we must delve deeper into the context and the various explanations that have been proposed over the centuries. The most straightforward theory is that the fire from the sky was simply meteorological in nature, an interpretation based on natural phenomena that were beyond the comprehension of the people at the time. One possible explanation lies in the phenomenon of bolides, large, bright meteors that explode in the Earth's atmosphere, creating a fiery trail. These objects can be so bright that they seem to light up the sky, and if they break apart, they can scatter fiery debris over a large area, which could certainly be perceived as fire raining down from the heavens. In fact, many cultures across history have recorded similar phenomena, interpreting them as divine signs, omens, or portents of war and disaster. Perhaps this was the case in Ireland, where meteor showers or fireball events could have been mistaken for celestial fire. The monastic scribes, living in an era before modern astronomy, would have had no concept of meteors or asteroids, and may have attributed such fiery sky events to the divine or supernatural realm. However, this theory does not fully explain the consistent nature of the records or the apparent regularity with which such events were documented across centuries, leading us to consider the possibility of other explanations. A more speculative theory suggests that these fires from the sky could be related to volcanic eruptions or atmospheric disturbances caused by volcanic ash clouds. Although Ireland is not located near any major volcanic activity, it is known that eruptions in distant parts of Europe, such as those from Iceland, could send ash clouds high into the atmosphere, potentially creating dramatic optical effects. These clouds of ash could refract sunlight, creating eerie, fiery glows in the sky, and the ash itself could cause the sensation of fire falling from above. Historical records do describe volcanic eruptions in nearby regions, such as Iceland's eruptions in the 5th and 6th centuries, and such events may have triggered unusual atmospheric phenomena visible from Ireland. Yet the question persists: why were the Irish monks so specific in their descriptions? They spoke not just of fire, but of fiery serpents, burning stars, and battles in the sky. These descriptions, far more vivid and detailed than a simple meteorological event, beg for a deeper investigation. Could it be that these accounts were inspired by something more extraordinary? Ancient texts and legends from cultures across the world often describe otherworldly beings descending from the sky, whether gods, angels, or extraterrestrial entities. Could the Irish monks, in their limited understanding of the cosmos, have been witnessing something far beyond the ordinary world? Could these events have been linked to some form of religious or spiritual significance? In the context of early medieval Ireland, Christianity was still a relatively new force, and the monks who documented these events were steeped in a worldview that sought meaning in divine signs and celestial omens. These occurrences could have been interpreted as warnings from God or as battles between divine and demonic forces, as described in biblical stories of heavenly conflict. Perhaps the monks recorded these events in an attempt to understand the divine will, signs of judgment or divine intervention in the earthly realm. Another more modern and controversial explanation suggests that these records could be the result of UFO sightings. While this theory may seem far-fetched to some, it has gained traction among those who believe that ancient peoples were witness to extraterrestrial phenomena. Some researchers suggest that the fiery serpents and blazing lights could be interpreted as alien craft, possibly visiting our planet during a time of relative isolation. Could these events have been early encounters with advanced technologies, perceived as fire by the people who had no frame of reference for what they were witnessing? This speculative explanation, though intriguing, remains highly debatable and unprovable, leading us back to the core question: what exactly were the Irish monks recording in these ancient manuscripts? Despite the various theories, the mystery remains unsolved. Were these fires from the sky truly natural phenomena, or did they represent something more profound and mysterious? The vivid descriptions of flames, serpents, and battles suggest that these were not simply meteorological events, but something the medieval Irish monks struggled to understand or contextualize within their worldview. As we reflect on the Irish fire from the sky events, we are left with more questions than answers. Were these descriptions a reflection of a natural event, misinterpreted through the lens of medieval superstition and religious symbolism? Or were these the records of something far stranger, something beyond the realms of conventional understanding? In the absence of concrete evidence, we can only wonder what might still be hidden within the pages of these ancient chronicles. Was there something in the Irish sky, something that even modern science cannot yet explain, that caused these monks to record such bizarre and awe-inspiring events? And if so, what does that tell us about the mysteries of the world, both past and present, that continue to defy our understanding? As we continue our journey into the strange and unexplained mysteries of history, we now turn our attention to an event that, though seemingly minor on the surface, has reverberated through time, leaving behind a trail of questions that still echo across the vast expanse of the Sahara Desert. In the heart of this unforgiving terrain, a peculiar phenomenon occurred. A phenomenon so abrupt and mysterious that it caused the once thriving trade routes to fall into complete silence, seemingly overnight. The Sahara Desert, a sprawling, endless ocean of sand where temperatures soar to unthinkable highs by day and plummet to chilling lows by night, was, at one point in history, far more than just a barrier of desolation. It was the crossroads of ancient civilizations, a vast trading network that connected distant empires, kingdoms, and cultures. The trans-Saharan trade routes, which spanned from the Mediterranean to sub-Saharan Africa, were once alive with the hum of merchants, travelers, and goods moving across the desert, carrying spices, salt, gold, and ivory. But during the 9th century AD, something happened. Those same routes, which had flourished for centuries, suddenly fell eerily silent. This was no ordinary decline. The silence that overtook the Saharan trade routes seemed unnatural, almost as if a great force or unknown event had brought the commerce to an abrupt halt. The desert, once a vibrant lifeline of exchange between the Arab world, North Africa, and West Africa, became an empty void. Caravans that once traveled along well-worn paths, guided by the stars and the rhythms of the desert, suddenly disappeared from historical records. This silence persisted for centuries, leading to speculation and theories that continue to intrigue historians and archaeologists today. To understand the mystery of this sudden silence, let us first examine the trans-Saharan trade in its prime. For centuries, merchants traveled across the vast desert with goods, moving through oases and trading posts such as Timbuktu, Taghaza, and Gao. This trade was not just about material wealth, it was also the exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultures. Salt and gold were the primary commodities, but merchants also carried ivory, textiles, and slaves across the desert, creating an economic network that spanned continents. The bustling trade routes made the Sahara a hub of cultural and economic exchange, with the Berbers, Bedouins, and Sahelian traders serving as the lifeblood of this ancient commerce. However, by the 10th century AD, this network began to falter. Travelers, once accustomed to the rhythm of trade, began to notice a significant drop in activity. The bustling caravanserais and trading hubs grew quieter, and the flow of goods slowed. Eventually, the trade routes that had once thrived became ghost paths, left behind as if the desert itself had swallowed up all evidence of the thriving commerce that had preceded it. At first glance, one might attribute this decline to natural factors, environmental changes like a shift in climate, or perhaps political instability. Indeed, some historical records suggest that the Saharan climate was slowly changing during this period. The medieval warm period, which had allowed agriculture to flourish across parts of North Africa, may have started to recede, making the desert more inhospitable. The Saharan trade routes, which relied heavily on oases and water sources, may have been increasingly threatened by desertification and diminishing water supplies. However, This theory does not explain the suddenness of the silence. It would seem unlikely that such an abrupt cessation of trade could be solely due to gradual environmental changes. Another possible explanation involves the rise of political instability in the region. The Almoravid dynasty in the 11th century and the subsequent rise of various other Berber dynasties could have disrupted the Saharan trade routes as they solidified their control over the region. These political changes might have created disruptions in the smooth functioning of the trade networks, forcing merchants to seek safer and more stable alternatives. Yet, while political shifts undoubtedly affected trade, the suddenness with which the routes fell silent suggests that something more dramatic might have occurred. A more speculative theory proposes that the sudden silence of the trade routes was linked to an unknown external force. Some historians have pointed to the spread of the Islamic Empire during the 7th and 8th centuries, suggesting that the expansion of Islamic rule across North Africa may have led to a disruption of traditional trade routes, as new routes were established to serve the expanding empire's needs. However, this theory does not fully explain the complete cessation of trade, nor does it account for the fact that the trade routes were already in decline before the full rise of Islam across the Sahara. What if the true cause of the disappearance of trade across the Sahara was something far more unexplained, something mysterious and beyond the conventional? Could the sudden silence have been caused by some supernatural event or divine intervention? This, of course, is a theory that walks the line between myth and speculation, yet it is not without historical precedent. Ancient cultures often interpreted strange events as omens, and the fall of a major trade route could have been seen as a divine warning or punishment, causing traders and merchants to abandon the paths in fear. In addition to supernatural explanations, one of the most curious theories comes from those who study unexplained phenomena. Some have suggested that the silence of the trade routes may be tied to the discovery of a hidden lost city or ancient site deep within the Sahara, a place whose secrets may have been unintentionally uncovered by traders, leading to unforeseen consequences. There are, after all, numerous mysterious structures and monuments scattered across the Sahara, pyramids, ancient wells, and even the ruins of cities that predate modern history. Could the sudden disappearance of the trade routes be linked to a discovery of something dangerous, perhaps a curse or an ancient civilization's final, unreported collapse? Others have speculated that new trade routes, emerging from coastal Africa to the Mediterranean and Middle East, may have rendered the Saharan routes obsolete, though this theory seems insufficient to explain the sudden and complete halt of commerce. Perhaps the most unsettling theory comes from those who suggest that the Saharan trade routes were deliberately sabotaged or destroyed. Some historians have pointed to the Moorish invasions or the rise of powerful empires in West Africa as potential culprits, forces that may have deliberately disrupted the flow of goods in order to control the trade themselves. However, evidence of such sabotage is thin at best, and the mystery remains unresolved. Finally, there are those who suggest that climatic events, such as a massive sandstorm, a solar flare, or even an earthquake, could have led to the complete cessation of trade, forcing caravans to abandon the once reliable routes. While such events are rare, they have been known to occur, and their effects on the landscape could easily have disrupted the intricate network of oases and waterholes that supported the trade. Could a sudden, catastrophic event have altered the landscape of the Sahara in such a way that trade became impossible, and the once bustling trade routes were abandoned in an instant? The mystery of the silent trade routes of the Sahara persists to this day. Historians, archaeologists, and even enthusiasts continue to probe the ancient records, looking for clues that might explain why the once flourishing trade routes fell silent so suddenly. Was it due to environmental change, political shifts, or perhaps an unknown disaster? Could the silence be the result of human intervention, or even something more mysterious, an unexplained phenomenon that defies conventional understanding? As we step back and reflect on this mystery, we are left with an unsettling realization. The answers to these questions may be hidden beneath the endless sands of the Sahara, waiting to be uncovered. Or perhaps they are lost forever in the forgotten corners of history. The trade routes may have fallen silent, but the question of why remains as loud as ever, echoing through the ages. What could have silenced the once thriving arteries of commerce across one of the world's most inhospitable deserts? And what mysteries still lie buried beneath the sands, waiting to be uncovered by those daring enough to seek them?